Good evening. Welcome to council. Just before I read the resolution to open council, I want to mention yesterday I was at a birthday party for a lady who turned 100, and her actual birthday is today, and I think it merits mentioning. So a very happy birthday to Rebecca Musey, 100 today, if you're watching tonight. Now I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour and seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the council meeting agenda dated Monday, February 24th, 2020 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Okay. So, our first invited presentation tonight is from Chief Mitt Williams from the Paramedic Services. Chief, welcome to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council, staff, members of the media, those in attendance behind me, and those online while we're watching TV. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's my privilege to talk to you about Muskoka Paramedic Services and represent the great paramedics in our area.
Can you pull that closer?
I absolutely can. We get in trouble at district if we touch it, so I wasn't touching it. I know my place, so if you've given me direction, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this slide just tells us a little bit of the outline of what I'll walk you through tonight, and it's mostly an overview of what your paramedic service does here in the community. I want to touch a little bit on community paramedicine. It's a great new program that we are very proud of here in Muskoka, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. Some future planning. I'm sure you've heard lots going around about the EHS modernization, so I'll touch a little bit on that, and then certainly questions. Paramedic services, we have approximately 90 paramedics that are full-time and part-time, and they work in 5 different areas throughout the district. We have 3 commanders as part of our management team. They're broken into 3 portfolio areas. So one is quality education and performance. We have a commander of operations and one of logistics. These are commanders that are out on the road supporting the frontline paramedics, and they're also responsible for those portfolios you see. We have 6 superintendents, which are unionized paramedics. They are on the road and work shift work and are out there to assist during night shifts and evening shifts. We have 2 community relations coordinators. These folks set up a lot of the public relation and education events that we do throughout the district. We also have an administrative assistant and a scheduler. We have 1 deputy chief. We have myself, but most importantly, we have the mascot Band-Aid Beaver, which you see in the picture there. So just for reference, our budget for 2020 this year, it's including operational and capital, is $12.3 million. So we have 5 stations, as I mentioned: MacTier, Port Carling, Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, and Huntsville. You can see them indicated on this slide with the green A. I may refer to the corridor. So the corridor for us would be Huntsville, Bracebridge, and Gravenhurst. We have 15 ambulances, 2 rapid response units, and 1 support unit. Our peak load staffing is 8 paramedic response units, and that's during the winter months. And then we go to 10 paramedic resources during the seasonal months. Interesting to note that during those seasonal months, and when I say seasonal, I mean June, July, and August, our call volume increases by 25% during that time. So you'll see that our deployment increases the same amount. We have 126,000 hours of staffing. So you have the 2018 numbers in front of you. There will be a report going to Health Services in April that will talk about our 2019 numbers. So for this discussion, we still have 2018. And you can see there that we have approximately 17,400 calls annually. That's 48 per day around the district. So just wanted to bring a bit of perspective of the numbers that your paramedic service does throughout the district. And you can see the average kilometers per day are about 2,600, and about 590 liters of fuel a day. So you can see at the bottom there, Huntsville represents 34% of all service requests. So we're doing about 16 service requests a day out of the station here in Huntsville. Your paramedics do over 750 hours in 2019 in over 100 different events, and I won't go through all the events there, but you can certainly see there's a number of things that we do and we participate in, not only here in Huntsville, but certainly around the district. The specific ones here in Huntsville are noted there on the screen, and you might recognize somebody in the photo there. So we also do medical coverage for such things as the Ironman, which I know is coming here today. So we like to support that. We know here in your community these events are important, and we try to work with the organizers of those events. Whether we need to change deployment, we ensure that emergency response into the area happens and that they account for that in their planning. And the winter games that just came last year, we had the winter events. We were able to work with those folks and donate some first aid kits. And we did a couple of check-ins and walk-arounds here. So very supportive of things that go on in the community here. Our public access defibrillator program, or PAD, we have 186 of the AEDs, automated external defibrillators, out in part of our program. And you can see under the note there that 45 of those are in Huntsville, 35 in town, and then 10 in the surrounding area. And hundreds have been trained at CPR. We offer courses where we'll train you not only in CPR, but we'll actually run you through how to run one of these AEDs. They're not as intimidating as you might think. So if you see us advertising for this, please sign up. Community paramedicine. So this is a program in 2013 that rolled out in some areas across the province. Muskoka had an application to go in, or an application to the province to start one of these programs, and at that time it was declined. When I arrived in 2016, this was a program that I had worked with setting up in Simcoe County, and I said, we need to really do this here in Muskoka. So we reapplied and we were successful the second time around. So as you can see, it's a program that's 100% funded through the government and more specifically through the North Simcoe Muskoka LIN. And it's a non-emergency community-based service. So this is a service where we bring the services to people's houses that may not be able to get out of their houses. There's 3 parts to this program. So it started with our community referrals by EMS or CREMS. So this rolled out in July of 2017, and this is with the frontline paramedics through the course of their duties, recognize a vulnerability with a patient in their house, and are able to refer them through our program, which in turn refers them to either a family health care team or through our health link at the district. Community wellness clinics, these are clinics that we set up primarily in seniors' buildings where we'll do vital sign checks. So we'll go in, we'll do blood pressure monitoring, we'll talk to folks about medication compliance, we'll talk to folks if they're diabetic, we'll talk a little bit about that, we'll talk to them about their house and fall assessments and things like that, just a conversation with them at their residence, in their lobby, or if they have a common room. And the third piece, which is really exciting and is quite new for us, that just started in March of 2019, is the home visit program. And this is a program which I mentioned earlier. This is where the paramedic comes right into your house and is able to do an assessment for falls right into your house and maybe give you some tips about falls, help you with your medication, help you with your blood pressure, and do all those things and assist you with navigation. Now, those of us that have ever tried to navigate the healthcare system, we know it's not easy, and we know that we need to do things to fix that, and I'll speak a little bit about that shortly. But some folks that aren't even involved in the system have such difficulty navigating, and that's where this program can help. Our goal of this program is not to duplicate service, because you may say, well, how is this different from some of the other services that exist? Our service is meant to fill in the gaps. We're nimble, we're able to be out there, we're able to respond to people's residents when maybe there isn't an opportunity for another service to do that, or they don't have the specialized training that we might have that we can do those things. So this program right now is, in my opinion, very underfunded. It has $64,000 in this program. There are a number of surrounding services to us that are in the $200,000+ for their programs. This is a very well-respected program. What we have done with the little money that we have. Going 1 day a week is incredible, and I'm very proud of our staff for going through this. So future planning, we are always looking at clinical, financial, and operational. We're always looking, we're always trying to refine on the go. As the year goes through, if we can do something that's a little more cost efficient, we're going to. If operationally we need to switch deployment on the fly because there's a special event, we do that. If we see a spike in call volumes for opioids or anything of that nature, we're able to adjust it on the fly. So we're always looking at call dynamics. We do have a 10-year plan, and we're starting year 4 of that plan, and we're excited to move that one forward. So you may see a report in May or June that will go to Health Services, and I'm sure will come here, where it'll look at our medium-term recommendations that we'd like to push forward over the next 3 to 4 years. The Ontario Healthcare Teams, of course, we have one here in Muskoka that we're just starting up, and I have the privilege of sitting on the Programs and Services Working Group. And community paramedicine is a big topic at that table and very well supported. And that's exciting for us because we think that we can bridge a lot of gaps in the system, and we're really looking forward to being a big part of that, how that healthcare team here in Muskoka moves forward. There's some recent legislative changes which may look a little bit different for paramedic services, not in the immediate future, but maybe in the short term. And these are about alternate destination transport. So in today's world, in our proactive paramedic response, we will go to somebody's house, take them to the hospital. In the future, with these legislative changes which they have made, we are able to transport to alternate destinations. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if there is a clinic around the corner that's more appropriate for somebody to go to, they can go there instead of taking them to the hospital. If there's perhaps a mental health facility that's closer, that we will be able to transport to there. Those are not into place protocol-wise now, but they are legislatively allowed to do those things. So there's a number of things that can change with that. You may hear me say in future reports, see and treat, hear and refer, treat and refer. Those will be things that will come in because there's different ways to manage patients that are coming to the front line. So we're excited about that. That'll be a very different look. And the EHS modernization, I mentioned that at the beginning, and those are sort of the top 3 that are floating around right now with the modernization. This is, of course, as a result of the announcement that we received. The government's looking at public health and EHS and modernizing what paramedic services looks like across the province. So non-urgent patient transfers, we know in our area, we have some difficulty with that. We don't have everything we need from a healthcare perspective here in Muskoka, so we do need to transfer people out. And that takes our resources out of the district. Plus, we do some inter-district transfers. So we're averaging about 3 transports a day on the non-urgent patient transports. So if there's a way we can look at that and manage that as maybe an area or a province, I certainly encourage that. And then dispatch the technology that dispatch has is very old, and the technology is being brought up to speed to today's world, which is great, and providing us with some real-time data. We typically have to wait for data coming from dispatch, but with the refinement that they're going through now, we're pretty excited that we're going to get some data in more real time. Offload delays at hospital, that one there we don't experience much of that here in Muskoka. I can draw back from my experience when I was in Peel and in Simcoe. It started in Peel, it moved its way to Simcoe. I'm hoping with the changes we're potentially making in the healthcare system, we won't have it here in Muskoka, but we're definitely mindful here in Muskoka. So I would compliment our hospitals, certainly working with us, that they offload our patients fairly rapidly and respect that we need to get back out in the community. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for that, Chief. I will ask if there are questions of council. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Chief. And through you, Your Worship, I do have a question. I think the community paramedic program sounds amazing, and I'm assuming that the pickup or the take-up on that is just growing. How do you get the message out to residents who might take advantage of, the assessment, in-home assessment and that sort of thing?
Through you, Your Worship. Great question, Councillor Alcock. The program, there is a big uptake on the program. So right now, we're associated with the 2 family health care teams here in Muskoka. And they have about 50,000 patients between the 2 of them that are there. And we work with them, and if they feel that their patient can benefit from our service, then they can refer that patient into the service. Our challenge is we're only 1 day a week, and it's outside of operations, so we can only take on a limited amount of people into our system. What's really exciting is the benefit we could make. We took 4 patients that had used the paramedic service in 2019 56 times, and 2018, 56 times, and in 2019, those 4 people used it only 14 times because they were part of our community paramedicine program, and we were able to proactively go and visit. Really exciting, great numbers. That's a 73% decrease in calls with just those 4 people. So imagine what we could do with more. So at this point, we have to be really selective in what we take because we want to be able to deliver, and just with the resources, we aren't able to take on too many. But it would be through those healthcare teams.
Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Chief. If I make a quick comment on the community paramedicine, there was a chance the funding wasn't going to stay on. And I was hearing from people that were actually on the program, and they were panicked that it was going to go away. So I know it's very underfunded, $64,000. I guess we'll just keep working on that one. But I know in some of the larger centers, some paramedics are sometimes utilized in the emerge departments and hospitals when there's super busy times, say in the summer, to help take care of the walking wounded and move that through. Is there any, are we contemplating that kind of thing, or is there anything in the works for that? I mean, because I want to add to your workload. Just wondering about that.
Through you, Your Worship. We have not contemplated there. As I indicated, we're up 25% in call volume in the summer, and we up staff. We hire staffing specifically for paramedic services. If the hospital wanted to look at some sort of platform to do that, we'd certainly be open to work with them somehow. But I would have to bring in even more staff to have them come in and work in the hospital.
Olga?
Thank you. Yes. Further, you alluded to your calls, and you mentioned 48 calls a day, which astounds me, 16 in Huntsville. How many of those would be sort of your classic emergency call, or is it a lot of it transport and things like that? Are we having like 48 car accidents every day?
Through you, Your Worship. Every day is different. So that's what I loved about being on the ambulance, is every day was different. You may go to the same base, but you met different people every day, and you dealt with different things every day. To give you a typical day, Councillor Withy, would be unfair, I think. There isn't a huge trend. It ebbs and flows. There may be times where we're experiencing a high number of call volume. I'm sure you could, or car accidents. I'm sure you can imagine Friday nights, Sunday nights, when most of the travel is coming through our area. There's a lot of transfers. Our peak time during deployment is about 11 a.m., so we do get our transfers during that time. So it depends on the day. Our top 5 are falls, there's trauma, there's chest pain, short of breath, and vehicle accidents. Those are sort of our top 5.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. Thank you, Chief McWilliam. You mentioned CPR AED kind of training together. We have, on occasion, been gifted AEDs, and they go into a maintenance program. Are you responsible for the maintenance of all the AEDs in the district, or how does that work?
So through you, Your Worship, for the 186 that I had mentioned in the presentation, we work with the facility. So what we do is we would say, if you need If pads were used and you need replacements, we'll work with you to order those pads. If there's an issue with your battery or there's a quality check that is required, we will work with you on that. We don't necessarily do everything. We can go out and assist you if the troubleshooting ideas we give you haven't worked.
Yeah.
But we work with any community. And we will even work with people that perhaps have bought a defib that's not under our program, but want to come into our program. We'll help and facilitate. They just need to contact us, and we're happy to work with them.
Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief McWilliams. So I know community living, sometimes we've used the non-emergent fall assist hotline. Is that in that number of call volume that you would say get in a day?
Through you, Your Worship, if it comes through 911, then absolutely. Falls are in our top 5, trips and falls.
Okay, I think we have like an extra number you can kind of call, but I think it's you guys who show up.
Yeah.
So it's not 911. We have a backdoor number.
Okay. Chief, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and thank your volunteers for all they do out there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, our next presentation is been anxiously awaited for. It's the Main Street reconstruction, and we have Les Ranta and Sally Wang here from EXP. And with council's permission, Mark Miskell, whose name was missed on the agenda, but is here from the district as well, so.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to Council for having us here tonight. What we've got tonight is just kind of an informational update on where we're at with respect to some of the options for the streetscaping portion of the Main Street job. We're at about 30% design now, which means we've got some of the underground servicing, more or less getting into the engineered drawing stage. What we'd like to share with you guys tonight is kind of just with the options that we've been able to develop on some of the streetscape portion of the work, as well as some of the costs associated with that. We've brought it before council in advance of a planned community info session for March 3rd, which would present a very similar presentation that you're going to see tonight, maybe modified based on some of the feedback that we've heard. So with that said, there will be an additional comment period that's open for public input through our engagemuskoka.ca site. And we'd invite anyone at council tonight or any members of the public to go onto that site and provide us with some of their input on the options that we've presented. So with that, I'll turn it over to Les Ranta, who's the project manager from EXP, and Sally Wang, who's the architect.
Can we get you
landscape designer.
guys to bring your mics close?
How was that?
We could get even closer, Les. In order for everybody.
I don't want to pull the, how was that? Thank you very much for the invitation to present our work to date. We look forward to very good and positive feedback on what we've done and to allow us to move forward. Our objectives for this presentation is to provide information to council regarding 3 streetscape design options. We are going to have a community consultation session, which Mark mentioned, on March 3rd. We hope to see everyone there. We will receive feedback from the public and from any other stakeholders until March 16th to allow us to put together our preferred design option. The proposed streetscaping design that we are working on now is based on some of the prior work of the town of Huntsville and the planning partnership, including the Main Streetscaping in Kent Park report, a design brief, and also the terms of reference for our current assignment that we're working on now, the request for proposal 19-651-200, which was put out both by the town of Huntsville and the district of Muskoka. The project limits that we are looking at start on the east side of the Muskoka River and the east side of the bridge and run westward toward Lawrence Street. It encompasses Main Street and any of the adjacent feeder streets and pedestrian ways feeding Main Street downtown. The scope of work for construction, which is proposed for the year 2021, just to give you a background on the scope. Utility upgrades and replacements, traffic signal and intersection improvements, meeting AODA, which is the handicapped requirements, accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. It's a very strict requirement, and our design will meet those guidelines. Roadway reconstruction or rehabilitation, of the Muskoka River Bridge. And then finally, downtown streetscaping, which we're here to talk about today. So what we're talking about here with the town of Huntsville is the surface design that will allow pedestrians and vehicles to work more efficiently and move more efficiently through the streetscape. Additional considerations which were identified by the planning partnership reports are Kent Park, the Lawrence Street Gateway, King Street pedestrian walk, and Town Square. So a few of the principles that underline all three of the options that we're going to present today are flex parking and Muskoka Moments amenity areas. Flexible street side parking, which is shown here in very simplified plan view, allows vehicles to park what we call parallel parking during certain times, but then that area can be configured to allow pedestrians to use it. So you'll see in the top right, a parking configuration, top left, and then bottom right, pedestrian configuration, which allows storefronts to push out onto the sidewalk area and still allow pedestrian areas to occupy that space. One of the second element then is the Muskoka Moment areas which are going to be provided. Sally?
Hi. I'm the landscape architect for this project. So this Muskoka Moment, this area is defined in the planning partnership, their concept vision. So we are showing here, it's like a kind of for everybody to understand. Actually, this area will be located on the end of each block, like end of the flex parking. And the component inside this area is local trees, like aspen, alder trees, suitable for this area. And the stones, like local stones, it's actually, and the Muskoka chair is a combination of this planting amenity and also surrounding by the back racks and other street furnitures. It's bring the local feature into the street. So, and this plan will showing the typical location of the Muskoka Moment. It's mainly on the street corner, on the end of the flex parking. Also, this plan showing the typical street component, like we show here on the building side. There's a market zone, like 0.6 meter for vendor to pull out their park signs, or some awnings, building awnings can encroach into this area, and then the rest, the main pedestrian is unobstructed walkway, and then beside the walkway is this flex parking. So this drawing showing the typical street component. Lash, you talk
Okay.
about the cost?
So, yeah, so what we've done, as you can imagine, there's fairly complex elements to the full streetscape. There's pedestrian elements, vehicle elements, amenity elements. So what we have done here is to present 3 options with various levels of finish, and those levels of finish result in various budgets. Starting from option 1, which is a standard finish, we'll quickly go through that option. Asphalt, concrete sidewalks, kind of the standard streetscape which you would have if you, didn't involve a landscape architect and those other amenities that you would like. Option 2, we've enhanced that level of finish in certain areas to provide very nice amenities at a budget of approximately $3 million for the project limits that we're looking at. And then finally, premium finishes, an option 3 that provides a little higher level of finish and a few more amenities. And that loosely resembles the planning partnership recommendations. Now, what we would expect is that perhaps the preferred option will be a hybrid solution that encompasses from more than one of these design level of finishes. So you might have 2 or 3 elements from option 1 and maybe 1 from option 2 and so on. So we're going to present these 3 options in a very high level general way, and we're looking for feedback based on that. So standard finishes and features. Here you'll see Lawrence Street on your left. The bridge will be on your right. Standard finishes: asphalt, line painting, crosswalks with paint, and concrete sidewalks. The Lawrence Street gateway will be fairly standard. It will use one of the Muskoka moment areas near Lawrence Street to provide an entrance amenity to the downtown area. Kent Park will be fairly basic as well. So again, option 1, $2 million, your standard street reconstruction, asphalt, concrete, painted lines. Kent Park will be fairly standard with concrete pavers. The Lawrence Street Gateway, very modified Muskoka moment feature. And King Street pedestrian walk will just be standard concrete as well. In all the options, the street lights will be decorative, provide electrical outlets, and allow for events to support events throughout the streetscape. Kent Park, again, this is the base model. This will be upgraded in the other options. Option number 2 is enhanced finishes and features. In this option, King Street pedestrian walk and the town square will be added, and that will be a concrete paver finish. The Lawrence Street Gateway will be upgraded slightly, and Kent Park will have additional amenities. Sally, I'll let you describe these. Oh, sorry, I'll just briefly go through this then. So the flex parking areas, the Muskoka moments will be concrete pavers. Crosswalks will be upgraded to imprinted asphalt. Kent Park will be concrete pavers. There'll be a kiosk there. And Lawrence Street Gateway enhanced. King Street pedestrian walk and the town square, which is in front of this building, will also be concrete pavers across the road.
For option 2, the material we use upgrade concrete unit paver. So choose of the pattern of the concrete paver. We reference this local deck and the dock. This kind of it's related to the local feature, but use into our paving design. This is linear staggered pattern reference this, the picture there showing is reference the deck. And crosswalk, we recommend this imprint asphalt. This is right now currently widely used for lots of urban development crosswalk. So this picture is Highway 7 in York region. So it's very widely used and lots of updated material and the techniques can make that more durable. For this option, the street tree is like limited in the Muskoka area. So you can see that because the reality of our space is it's not wide, too wide, so we limited the street tree in Muskoka moment, that's to end. And Kent Park, it's like, I say it's like enlarged version of Muskoka moment. So on the street, we have Muskoka moment, and the Kent Park is a kind of anchored area for the whole street. It's enlarged version of Muskoka area. It's same, so the feature and the looking is consistent on the street. And in this option, we put a removable information kiosk. So this kiosk also can be used for the event, special event. And King Street crosswalk, this figure showing how this crosswalk connected with the town hall square and the flex parking and the Muskoka moment. And this is like illustration. It's still in the preliminary stage, but it's showing the component of the crosswalk. And we show this crosswalk has a AODA compliance tactile before the cross and bollards. And one side is a town hall square, and another side is a regular asphalt driveway. Option 3.
So in option 3, we present a solution that has premium finishes. Again, it most closely mirrors the planning partnership reports and recommendations. In this option, the Lawrence Street Gateway would be significant. It would be a fairly high-cost addition to the solution. However, it would certainly do a very nice job of announcing entrance to the downtown core. And again, the King Street pedestrian walk and the town square is part of this solution. And Kent Park, as you'll see, has some upgraded features. The option 3 cost estimate is approximately $4.8 million. Again, our flex parking and the Muskoka moment surfaces will be concrete pavers because of their durability. Crosswalk, again, imprinted asphalt, but where we've really upgraded the features are for Kent Park, King Street pedestrian walk, and the town square, where we propose granite pavers. The Lawrence Street Gateway will be a major feature, and again, the street lights will be decorative and with electrical outlets to support community functions and events in the area. Go ahead, Sally.
For this upscale streetscape option 3, this option we use granite paver, so that's a pattern we prefer to use, and that's a local material, like a local material of the granite. So there's a consideration you use local material, which it's from here, or there's other option use imported granite, which is more cost effective. And for this option, we have showing the street tree, which is on the planning partnership design. This is definitely cost more to have a street tree beside the flex parking and the soil cell underneath. So this is like kind of more costly, but there is more nice feature in the street. And the Ken Park, for this option, we add a water feature for Ken Park. So water feature is kind of modern style of water feature. It's it's consistent with the surrounding the stones, and the water actually just the thin layer of the water on the surface. And the winter time, it's easily can be no water and just as a regular pavers. So this is a modern style, but it's represent the local feature.
So we just wanted to, there's the three options, and again, what we're hoping is to get comments and feedback, both on the larger scale, which of the options, in consideration of the budget, that stakeholders, council, and the public would support. And then also, if there's individual features from one that you feel should be incorporated, regardless of which option is used, we would like to have that feedback as well. And just a brief statement on paving material comparison. What we've attempted to do in presenting these three options is to rationalize using the expensive material in option 3, where we get the most bang from the buck, where its durability is consistent with the use on it. So we're really avoiding the granite pavers for the roadways because of long-term operational considerations. The concrete unit pavers then are used for some of the high-traffic areas where we want to get that aesthetic look on options 2 and 3. The flex parking areas, which will be used for pedestrian areas as well, for instance. And the imprinted asphalt for crosswalks that is proven and really provides a nice solution. Very durable, but it gives you that visual look that you're looking for. So comments and feedback for the three designs are being accepted, both on the Engage Muskoka platform online, and then at the community information session next Tuesday, we'll have paper as well to take written feedback there instead of online, if anyone wishes to do that. We plan on receiving public comments until March 16th, at which time we will begin to develop the preferred design, which may be strictly one of these options or a hybrid of more than one option. Mark?
Thanks. I guess one thing to add to that as well is that we're not really looking for definitive direction tonight at council. This is more just to share the information that we have to date on some of the options that we've seen. The public intake for comment, obviously we want to hear from as many people as possible on this, and the plan is to kind of take that, synthesize that data and come back to this council, I believe right now it's tentatively for April, and present kind of what we've heard from a lot of the stakeholders in both the business and community in general. So that's kind of the next steps for this one. Happy to answer any questions at this point. Thanks.
I realize you don't need a decision, but I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, probably for clarity. And so we're going to start with Councillor Stone.
So here's what happens with these projects all the time. Starts out gorgeous, everybody wants it, and we end up having something wholly mediocre because of budget. This is the showpiece for our town. This is our face to the public. So I feel we need to do it right. Don't kill the finances in order to do it, but we need to push for things it is the most important thing in our town when people come to visit, and this is what they see. So we need to do it right. In my opinion, the soil cells, in order to get large, full-growth trees, is imperative. I think that is what Muskoka is all about. So if we can't have the big trees like the old town feel, then that's a real problem for me. I have a question about the granite and concrete pavers. So what's the difference in cost? And kind of makes sense that that may be one place we can save some money. Do it in front of town hall maybe, but not across, not everywhere. So what is the difference in cost?
We did some research about the cost of the granite paver and the concrete paver. So the differences, if we compare imported granite with concrete paver, is like 50% higher imported granite.
Okay.
But for if we use local granite, will cost 3 times more than three or 4 times more than the concrete pavers.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. So imported granite is far more, is a lot
Yes.
cheaper than local granite,
Yes,
unless we can work perhaps with a local business.
right.
And the concrete pavers are about 50% cheaper
50% cheaper than the imported.
than the imported.
Yes, half price of that,
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. I guess sort of my overall statement would be, you've given us this, thank you for this presentation, but I'd like to see a breakdown of the cost, because if I'm going to pick and choose little things, that's twice I've done that tonight, then I need to know how much each one costs. So it's to look at your presentation and say, that looks nice and that looks nice. I mean, as you pointed out, we can pick and choose from each one. So we're going to need the laundry list, I think, to say that this tree costs that much or this water feature costs that much. One thing I would be interested in seeing more of is cross-the-street pedestrian walkways. Perhaps another one up by PharmaSave across there. We get people just running across the street all places all the time. So I like the feature in front of Town Hall, but I think we could use a couple more of those sort of courtesy walkways. You see them in other small towns where people sort of wave and people stop and cross safely. But I'd like to see the laundry list. Thanks.
Councillor Alcott.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I will start off by saying ditto and ditto, because, and I won't comment a lot, but for me, it was a quick flash of what the possibilities were, but there's a whole lot more I'd love to visually, I'd like to see. One of the things that struck me of options 1, 2, and 3, to Councillor Stone's comment about this is a showcase for us. We know we're going to spend a lot of money. I don't really want to, nickel and dime it, because it is going to be a showcase. So if I look at option 1, and I think one of the things this is supposed to do, as you rightly pointed out, it is pedestrian-oriented. So how to make this pedestrian-oriented space the best it can be. We're using multi-modal spaces and that sort of thing. Option 1, if we went that way, it would be mediocre and it wouldn't do the job. And so in my mind, I immediately dismiss option 1. So then I go to what Councillor Withey and Councillor Stone said about if we're starting then to look at that combination of, well, how much does the granite cost versus the other? And I certainly, right off the bat, would say, well, I'm okay with not having the big flashy entranceway into the town, not a big one for me. So if that's like a whole lot of money, easy. But that's just me, and so therefore I would like to see the cost. But it's a great start. It gets us thinking about it.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like what I'm hearing so far. I'd like to just highlight or emphasize that I think the key to Kent Park is going to be the functionality and the use, the day-to-day use. So I think seating is important. I think being able to just linger in our downtown, I think is really important, because right now, that space, it does the opposite. It kind of chases you along versus making it a social space that's designed for everyone. Everyone, whether you're visiting or whether you live here and are on a break, it needs to be a place that is very useful. And I really like what Councillor Alcock said about the functionality. Making something beautiful to put on posters or on Instagram is not nearly as important as making it useful for everyone in their day-to-day. So the crosswalks, I think, is really key. And the question I have is, the imprinted pavers, regardless of what style we use, how do they hold up in terms of winter maintenance? Because our, we dig up manholes and chunks of pavement all the time with plowing. So I'm just wondering how those would hold up in the long term.
Agree 100% that the maintenance and the winter operations on them, and the thoughts to have in the options present either the standard painted crosswalk lines or imprinted pavement, which is the same as pavement, and it wears the same as pavement, was very important to some of the operations guys that aren't here tonight, that they can just plow over that and scrape down on it without damage. So that's one of the reasons from a practical point of view that we propose that. One or the other, either line painting or imprinted asphalt in all of the options, because we don't want any of the blocks falling up, when guys are plowing it.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, we have the public meeting on Tuesday next week, I believe. What time is that meeting? It didn't say on the slide. Just for
So
everybody
6 to
listening.
7:30,
6 to 7:30?
with a presentation at 6:15.
Second, you talked about an audible aorta alarm at the crosswalk in front of Town Hall here. Is that a signage or something that you're putting up? Talk about signage and audible alarm there. So I was just curious what that looks like.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you. I think the AODA requirements are primarily the tactile surfaces and the grading in the area to promote basically accessibility and movement through the area, but the audibles would just be essentially the push button beeping. So it would be pedestrian activated. If we've got, I don't think that there's signals planned for this section.
No.
So it'd be a typical crosswalk with some flashing activation. And what that would do is once that activation is on, that's when you would hear the beeping.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I agree with all the comments that have gone around. We have one opportunity to do this and do it right. I think it's paramount for the preservation of our downtown core and to support the local businesses down there. So I'm looking forward to the laundry list and getting this going.
Councillor Schumacher?
So most of my questions have been asked, so that's great. The presentation, of course, 6 to 7:30. Are you guys going to post that out on your website? Or do we get to do a media release, Town of Huntsville, so that everybody is aware of what time that is, and to let businesses and whatnot know for Partners Hall?
Thank you, through you. I guess the short answer is yes, we'll be pushing it out on the Engage platform as well as social media. There's a handout that's going around as well. We'd like to work closely with the town on getting that kind of door to door in the business area. We wanted to present here tonight before we amped up the awareness from it in case anything changed based on the direction of council.
Okay, and then further to, I think I just sort of briefly whispered to you, Mark, that, what Councillor Withy was suggesting is the crosswalk area possibly at West Street to create an option, because a lot of people tend to cross there in the middle of the street where there is no actual street lights at this point. I know when we had sort of looked at this way back when, there was talk about the idea of at street lights, do we, have traffic turning and then maybe completely stop that and have crosswalks or have a chance to do pedestrian crossing all at once kind of thing. Is that further to this, or is that on the table still?
It hasn't been until today, but what we're hearing here is that to look more closely at the pedestrian crossing of the street. And the King Street crossing, jumped out as an obvious thing if we're going to make that a pedestrian corridor. But possibly a second mid-block crossing is what we're hearing, so we'll look at that.
Councillor Withy? Actually, yes. Okay. Just one following up on the crosswalk, if I might, Mark. We've had requests to district numerous times over the last 10 years or so about crosswalks on Main Street, whether they be in front of this building or up around Pharmasave, and the answer's always been no. So is this something that's changing, or are we talking a different type of crosswalk than what we've requested in the past?
Thank you, and to respond to your question, I haven't seen any of the, I've seen one request come through in my time there, and it was outside of the downtown core, but I mean, these would be your, I won't say typical crosswalks, something more typical would be out by Riverside School, which we recently put in there, fully AODA compliant, but it's fully signalized. But if what we're hearing from council is to increase what I'll call porosity across the street, so that's just getting pedestrians from one side to the other, we can certainly look at where those crossing opportunities are. And how we can implement those. So, I hear you, getting people around outside of their vehicle through the downtown core is important. So if it's something like what I'll call a scramble intersection, where you've shut it down, it's 4 reds and you can go wherever direction you want, we can certainly look into those types of options.
So the idea of crosswalks, so that might be a conversation we should be having at the district table before we actually get to 2021? To make sure that we're planning something that is sanctioned?
We could certainly do that, without speaking for our entire committee account, but I would be supportive of something that would increase crossing opportunities through the downtown core, knowing myself the challenges that people have trying to get across the street. If we could get them in, areas that are recognized crossing, people can look for those types of opportunities.
Yep, Les?
And just further to that as well, we're looking for opportunities of traffic calming. And one of the solutions, or a big piece of the solution, may be the town square, where the material is different, and it triggers a sensation to someone driving a vehicle that, this is a different type area. Let's slow down and see what's happening here.
I have one other question. In option 1, it didn't look like the flex parking was part of option 1. Is it part of it, just with a different surface, or not at all?
Yes, it is with asphalt.
Okay.
Any color you want, as long as it's black.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, seeing none, thank you very much for that presentation, and I look forward to the public comments next week. Okay, moving on to our third invited presentation, Kelly Haywood from the Huntsville Lake Bays Chamber of Commerce. Welcome. Have you got a PowerPoint, Kelly?
I do.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. All right, why am I here? We're talking about our community marketing initiative, which I'll just start by saying, thank you once again to council for supporting everything that we do. I think we have a great partnership, and I'm going to talk about our existing partnership and, how we can continue to grow our partnership. Our partnership has given us the opportunity to really position Huntsville in a really, really busy market. Tourism is becoming every single day is becoming even more competitive. So having your partnership is very important. I'm going to give you a brief outline of what we've accomplished in this past year, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about, moving forward. I want to thank Scott Acton, our chamber president, for being here with me tonight to support us. We have a great board. I'll continue, kind of doing two here. So much of what we do for our community marketing initiative is around our digital online presence. This year, we merged our Huntsville Adventures and our Chamber of Commerce website to ensure that our business community was front and center for visitors and researchers. This also enabled us to promote and position Huntsville and our tourism brand across both platforms. Under the Town of Huntsville's website, under Visit Huntsville, your marketing team has strategically linked to the Adventures website, which is awesome. Our two other websites, Maple and Girlfriends, have hundreds of reciprocal links and partnerships, and these sites perform very well for very specific market segments and heavily linked to our Adventures tourism site. This year, we're going to be heavily investing in our HuntsvilleAdventures.com website, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So the shot that you see in front of you is from Saturday at Snowfest. Really exciting. I'll talk about that a bit more too. As part of our strategy, as I indicated, digital marketing is a really big component of what we do. Digital content marketing, and we've listed a few in front of you, but we had 18 significant campaigns. These can all be found under the blog section of our site. These are the drivers for our website. They're also, the content that drives people, from a social media to click on our website, learn more about our community, and drive them to our business community as well. We now have a writer on staff who's new, who will be spending a great deal of time doing weekly blogs. So this is something that we intend to increase significantly. So just talking about events, we have seen growth on all of our event campaigns. Maple was quite tricky this year as we had a blizzard first thing in the morning, and the end of April are hoping that won't happen again. We had the introduction of two new events, Flavors of Ontario and Snowfest, as you're aware, and the return of year 4 of our Maple Festival and year 13 of Girlfriend's Getaway Weekend, another sold-out weekend. Flavors of Ontario is positioned as a culinary event. It's a midweek event in the summer, very unique event highlighting our downtown, beautiful waterfront access. It's very much a workforce development event, as well as we're working with Niagara College and engaging hospitality students with the hopes that they'll consider relocating to Huntsville when they graduate to fill many of the positions available in their field. Not only are Girlfriend's Getaway Weekend and Maple Festival and Trail significant tourism events that draw thousands of people to our area, they are marketing campaigns. They help keep Huntsville on the map and top of mind for future travelers. We always say to businesses, if they don't see a direct impact because of the event, that we can assure them that the trickle down of certainly the exposure of Huntsville will be seen in their business. These events are all positioned strategically in shoulder season. Flavors, as I indicated, is midweek in the summer, but also, highlighting Huntsville as a workforce development opportunity. So this past weekend's inaugural Snowfest, certainly we hope to see a year 2. I will be following up with Fowler, who was extremely generous in providing us all the snow. It was awesome. There were so many incredible, beautiful faces and families celebrating winter outside, playing. The BIA board, especially Morgan Richter and Rachel Hunt, have been extremely supportive. Next year, we plan to grow this significantly with Huntsville's Hockey Night in Huntsville, partnering with the Rotary Club and really growing the event. We'd love to see it as a 2-day event so that we're not putting the snow down one day, taking it off the next. That was due to the OFSA event. Earlier we were planning to do it Friday, Saturday. So it was great. I'd be remiss, especially with it having just been this weekend, not to especially thank Greg Pilling in particular for being so present and so positive and supportive. Scott Oval, of course, for working so closely with us on everything we do. Matt Huddlestone and Kevin Bucock. I mean, the list is endless. Your team has been phenomenal. It's just been such a pleasure to work with everyone, and they really, I feel, really know the importance and potential of a municipal chamber partnership, and they're just really incredible collaborators. So I really want to thank them a great deal for helping make that happen. It was not an easy event to pull off. So just in terms of tourism services, we also continue to develop tourism services. We operate our tourism service office in Huntsville. We promote local attractions and chamber members. We offer tons of brochures, give directions, activities for visitors. Good opportunity when someone comes in looking for something in particular for us to upsell them, to make sure they know about different businesses or different things to do. We have a roaming tourism ambassador who operates a tourism tent at many events in the region. It's a great asset. And we have lots of publications, our visitor guide, tear-off map, and these are distributed not only within Huntsville and surrounding area, but also throughout Muskoka, Ontario travel locations, and all the way down to border locations, actually. We assist in vacation planning, so we do get a lot of inquiries well in advance of people visiting. We have an online event calendar that's widely used throughout the community, an event bulletin board, our equipment rental program. I think we had 77 different users in this past year, which is a lot. We do a familiarization tour where we take our students and we, work across the visit businesses and attractions and parks and that sort of thing. We hired 3 summer students, and we've applied for a few grants to see if we can get more for additional tourism ambassadors. Of course, we manage the community signs at the end of Huntsville West and over by Salvation Army. We are looking and working with our community groups not only to replace and enhance those signs, but also to ideally add an additional one on Center Street. So during your wayfinding signage initiative, we'd really like to look at the possibility of installing one there. We also look after the bridge banner installation, which is always fun. And those are just a small glimpse of some of the things that we have going on. So looking ahead, looking at what we have coming up next year, in terms of our plans, certainly that picture actually is the Flavors of Ontario dinner. If you weren't there, it'll look quite similar this year, and we certainly plan on doing it again. It's in mid-August. We do certainly plan on, actually I'll skip right to the numbers. 58,000 approximately in digital marketing spend, 145,000 in events and assets. So that's event campaigns and our equipment campaign. 75,000 in human resources, which is 2 positions, and then 32,000 in tourism services. I have a detailed budget that I'll hand out for you as well. In terms of tactics, we continue to focus, I'm sorry for this small print, but it's a very specific demographic profiled by our Ontario Tourism Marketing Partnership. We're focusing on nature lovers, connected explorers, and knowledge seekers. These are, again, as I indicated, our titles identified by Ontario Tourism. We focused on them to align with our assets in our community and where we see the highest return. We, as I indicated earlier, will significantly be building our blog installations where we'll be looking at doing weekly focuses and be featuring on many businesses, features, and attractions. So if you have suggestions, we're always open to what you might suggest. In terms of next steps, we also intend on, we have a rural economic development grant that was submitted today. We'll be applying also to FedNor We're leveraging the dollars quite closely with Explorer's Edge and Muskoka Tourism. We are working very closely with the Accommodation Tax Group. Recently, the Chamber, on a side note, sort of separate from this initiative, has been given the opportunity to administrate the board, which will help us really keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on there and identify opportunities for more collaboration. The Accommodation Tax Board has also supported the Chamber a great deal in our marketing efforts as part of the budget. We do have an expired memorandum of understanding with the municipality around this particular initiative, which we're already in the process of starting to revisit, so we'll be doing that soon. And I want to thank Councillor Wiebe, of course, who is our Chamber of Commerce councillor representative, for your great support, and all of you for taking part and always keeping in touch with me about everything that's going on. So that's all I have for you for tonight.
Thanks, Kelly. Always great to get the annual update. I think last year we missed it, so
Yes.
this one was
Apologies.
a double whammy. It was
flew
great.
by.
There may be some questions from council.
Yeah.
Councillor Alcott.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Kelly, for that presentation. It's amazing, all of the stuff. And Snowfest was great.
Good.
I heard from Buck Miller, and he was so enthusiastic about how that went, so that's really great. Just a quick question. You mentioned at the very end about the RED application, and I may have missed it, but what were you thinking? What was the application for? Is there a particular event, program?
Through you, Your Worship. It is for additional marketing dollars, very specific focus on a winter campaign. Snowfest is certainly part of that, and I'm glad you brought up Buck Miller. He'd kill me if I hadn't mentioned his bike race, which was a huge component of the event. And, we definitely see the opportunity for growth for Snowfest, not just for the event. And I know I say this over and over and I get sick of hearing it, but this year it was a 4-week marketing campaign. I would really like to launch it, at least a 6-week marketing campaign. I think the fat bike component and continuing to focus on human-powered activity and truly celebrating winter activity. There's lots of ideas coming at me in the last couple of days. I'm still open for as many as you can give us that we can fit in, but it was specifically targeted at a winter marketing campaign, to answer your question.
Other questions? Oh, seeing none. Thanks, Kelly. Oh, sorry. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick one, sort of off topic, but on the same topic. With the Chamber, how's the Chamber feel about the Ironman coming in July? Does that affect or does that enhance what you're doing in the downtown core? Or any comment?
Right. I mean, sorry, the last part, just in terms of downtown core, I would say it's a whole community impact. We're extremely supportive of Ironman and work as much as we can with Ironman. We certainly market it, support them with any equipment that we have, and I will continue to work with them as closely as possible. There's no question that we'd love to see Ironman happen in the shoulder season, but recognizing that that's not an option, I think that it's an absolute, it would be a huge miss for our community to lose the Ironman for so many reasons. Not only does it perfectly align with the brand of Huntsville in terms of, celebrating nature, human-powered activity, outdoor, activity, that sort of thing. It's also their brand is so very powerful, and to be associated with it is something that, it's really hard to put a dollar figure on. I've participated in a number of discussions around the route. I think it's tricky. Certainly, it's a tricky conversation, but I think Ironman has been extremely supportive and open to hearing, how they can best accommodate it. I've talked with Denise and a number of people about how great it would be to build, temporary bridges. I think there's some great wishes out there that we could, strive for long term. But I strongly believe, and speaking on behalf of the business community, would definitely suggest that losing Ironman would be a huge issue in Huntsville. Would be a big loss. And I mean, not only for the training that happens, weeks and weeks beyond and all year round, from a digital marketing perspective, it's a phenomenal thing.
Councillor Schumacher.
Through you, Mayor Terziano. Kelly, thank you for the presentation. Actually, I was just at a meeting at Georgian College on Friday, and I guess they are bringing in, I believe it's 20, don't quote me, 20 to 30 students from India that are going to be in the Huntsville and Bracebridge area through an increase in their hospitality and tourism. So I don't know if that's another avenue. I know you're using Niagara College, but is that another avenue to tack onto, I guess they will be transporting them to the Muskoka campus, but they will be living here in Huntsville and Bracebridge, and they tend, my understanding is they're going to do this semester after semester after semester, so they're bringing in a number of students to our area.
Yes, through you, I will, and Mayor Terziano, certainly, we're working closely with Explorers Edge, who have partnered very closely with Georgian, and in all, like, workforce is a very big priority for us, probably more on the Chamber of Commerce side, so less around community marketing, which is why I didn't mention too much about it, but it's obviously of very significant importance to our business community, so we'll continue to be supporting those initiatives as much as possible.
Oh, you're off the hot seat.
That's okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kelly.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Scott, for being here. Okay. So, we now move to deputations, and we have with us Dave Lyons, the Executive Director of the Children's Foundation of Muskoka.
Am I on?
Now, it's got to turn red. Yeah.
Am I on? I'm live? All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to share a bit about the Children's Foundation of Muskoka. As I travel and speak and connect with folks, I realize that, you know, I sometimes think we're quite known and branded, but I realize not maybe so much. So this is a really great opportunity, so thanks for that. So I'll just take a few minutes to tell you a bit about who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And that'll just be in a nutshell and give you a chance to then follow up with maybe how, you know, our things that we prioritize in our community can connect. So in a nutshell, who we are, we've been around for about 28 years now. We started as a small group in Bracebridge out of the Children's Aid Society. I think at the very beginning there were a couple of board members and a couple of applications, and we have a board member now who was sitting at the table then, and she said, you know, I remember looking back and saying, well, why aren't there more applications? There's lots of need out there. And I think it was a pretty simple answer, was that there was no money. So there could have been lots of applications, but they wouldn't have been able to fund them anyway. So that was a pretty small beginning. To today, we now have 12 board members. We have an admin assistant, and as of a year and a half ago, an executive director. And so we have grown, and we now serve about 400 to 500 kids a year, and with grants totaling about $175,000 a year. So over our 28 years, that would be about 7,500 kids in Muskoka, with grants totaling over $2.5 million. So that's a pretty, from small beginnings to a nice point where we are today. So our vision is to help create an equitable Muskoka where all kids have access to the things that they need and opportunities that they need to be happy and to be healthy and to feel a sense of belonging in our community. So what do? We have 4 different funds that we run. Our first fund is our general catch-all fund, and it's called Growing Healthy, Happy Kids. And basically we provide grants to support recreational, cultural, and emotional needs of our kids in our community, and it could be through sports or through recreation opportunities, dance or drama or music, or maybe providing just basic needs like a bed or a crib or winter boots or winter clothing. It's our catch-all, it's our great big security blanket for kids to make sure that they're well and healthy and happy and able to do the things that they need to do. Our other 3 funds are a little bit more specific in nature. We have a campership fund. And the campership fund, it ran for our first time last year. It was a great fit for us and a new beginning, and it came at a good time where the district wasn't quite sure exactly how their funding was going to go to support sending kids to camp. And we were able to step in, and in our first summer, we sent 95 kids to camp, and that was both day camp and residential camp. it's a funny thing. Camp is, we live in the mecca of summer camp, I think. We're surrounded by summer camps, and the sad irony of it all is that Muskoka kids don't go to Muskoka camps. In our informal studies, we've talked to all the camps that we've partnered with. It probably would be less than 5% of kids in Muskoka go to a Muskoka camp. And that's, that just doesn't somehow seem to be quite right. There are a number of reasons why that happens, but I might say perhaps financial barrier might be a big piece of that. So at this point, we have, again, our partnership with the district has continued. Their funding is limited, I think, now more to the daycare aspect of things and day camp. So they can only fund day camp and daycare opportunities, and we can make that work. But we have 11 camps on board, and we are looking to run year 2 of it, and we're opening up applications later this week and are hoping to increase the number of kids and continue to support kids in Muskoka. Our third fund is called the George Corn Memorial Fund for Hockey, and it is named after a former Bracebridge resident and Rotarian, George Corn, and that's a partnership that we have, the Children's Foundation of Muskoka, with the Huntsville Minor Hockey Association, with South Muskoka Minor Hockey, and Muskoka Rock, and we presently, through that fund, have 18 kids in it, and those kids are funded for 3 years, all equipment, all registration, so they're fully paid, and we certainly won't leave them at the end of 3 years. We'll make sure that their full hockey careers are realized for as long as they want to play. And of those 18 kids, 10 of those kids are from Huntsville. And our fourth fund is an educational fund. It funds kids in post-secondary education. We have 2 funds, the Ted Britton Family Trust and the Onaway Pond Fund. And that provides funding for up to $5,000 per year per child, and we presently have 4 kids in each of those funds. So that's a great thing, and ensuring that those kids have the opportunity to carry on with schooling as they would like and need. So in a nutshell, why do we do it? I think I'm preaching to the choir. I think you know as well as I do exactly what the needs are and why we do what we do. I could share individual stories that are incredibly heartbreaking that alone would drive our work. But you know what we do is we always come back to some stats, because I think if people know, really the why, and they understand kind of the factual base as to what's really going on, it really, for folks, it connects. They kind of go, you're kidding, I had no idea, because you know what, on the outside, we look like we've got it all going on. We've got a beautiful place to live, and we are a 4-season playground, and people come, and maybe for folks that aren't in that situation, it's pretty idyllic, and I can't deny pinching myself every day when I have some of my drives when I'm going to a meeting. I think, man, this is where I'm driving, and if I happen to be listening to a Toronto radio station, I just kind of chuckle and think, geez, that's too bad that's what your drive is, because this is what mine is. So some stats that we have to, I think, consider when we look at this. 17% of our kids in Muskoka, 17%, that's 1 in 6 of our kids live in poverty. 1,500 families have incomes below $30,000 a year. And the families that we fund, we did some looking at our numbers. We fund, the average income of our families is about $28,000 a year, which is about $14,000 below the LICO cutoff, or low income cutoff. So that's pretty significant. Nearly half the jobs in Muskoka are part-time or seasonal. And so if you think about where that family is come registration time, with a part-time job or a seasonal job that may be nearing its end, that would be a pretty tough situation to be in, and a pretty tough conversation, I think, to have around the dinner table that really, it's a pretty tough time right now, and maybe, dance isn't really in the cards for you this year. And so really the context of jobs is so important. Median employment income is 21% lower in Muskoka than anywhere else in the province. And we cite a recent study that's come out that looks at kids in poverty. And the study clearly shows how kids and youth that live in poverty are more socially isolated, they experience more stress, have poorer mental and physical health, and have fewer opportunities than their peers. And that's quite profound. When we think that our kids really are facing a mental health crisis where 1 in 5 kids are dealing with anxiety, stress, and other aspects of mental health challenges. And we know, research has shown, we know that physical activity is being used as a treatment modality by doctors to support these kids. Getting kids active, getting kids moving, getting kids involved in physical makes a huge difference. And you know what? It's a pretty practical way to support kids to better well-being. And really, 3/4 of our applications do support kids in being physically active and engaged in sport and recreation. So, it's our mission to work in partnership with Muskoka community to support kids to access the things that they need to achieve immediate and lasting impact in their lives. As a charitable organization, we rely solely on the generosity of individuals, of local businesses, churches, school groups. We don't receive any other external funding of any kind. And a significant portion of our funds that come in go right back out. We're so careful to be careful about our administrative costs. We've recently had a couple articles written through Overtime magazine, and I think the thing that compelled Jeff to write these articles was he was astounded at our low overhead in terms of running our organization. He said, you hear about some charitable organizations that the majority of the funds that come in are running the organization and not much goes out. We're exactly the flip of that. I have a nice desk in the basement which looks out over the garden, and our administrative assistant works at our kitchen table, and we do everything we can to ensure that whatever comes in goes right back out into kids' hands, into families' hands to be able to access what they need. So we'd love to have your support and have you join us as we create equitable opportunities for kids in Muskoka. There's more information on our website at childrenofmuskoka.com if you'd like to find out a bit more about it. I brought some flyers just so you can kind of follow up and kind of see, and you may know folks that want to connect with us for those donations, because really we are as good as our dance partners, which are the folks that donate to us. So those donations are what that allow us to do it. And finally, we have our big fundraiser is a gala that we hold the first weekend of November every year, making sure that we don't cross paths with things like Girlfriend's Getaway. And so we've been on that first weekend. And this year we're moving to Hidden Valley for the first time. So that'll be a neat thing for us to spread the word in North Muskoka and host that event up here. So we hope to see you there. And again, thanks so much for having me here today.
Thanks, Dave. Questions from council? Councilor Stone.
Dave, can you tell people where to get an application if they know a child in need?
So everything is online now. And so if you go to childrenofmuskoka.com, there's a button for apply for support and also donate here. So it's all at childrenofmuskoka.com. Thanks.
Councilor Withy.
Thank you, Worship. Other than praising my old camper mate, Dave Lyons, for everything he does, I think this is an admirable thing you're doing in your retirement years. Good on you.
Thank you.
So Councillor Stone asked the question about access. Your statistics are bang on. I mean, we always looked at those things when I was on the Lynn Hospital Board about the poverty around here. You've got your galas in November, and what's that, like a dinner dance sort of thing?
It is this year buffet. It is a live and silent auction and a dance with Tobin Spring.
I've never danced with Tobin Spring.
Tobin would be exactly what you need, because I've seen you dance, and I think Tobin would be exactly what you're looking for.
All right, well, on that, I think I'll wrap it up.
Any other questions? Councilor Fitzgerald.
Just a comment. Thanks for doing what you do, Dave.
Thanks,
and your
appreciate it.
enthusiasm. I think I can't think of kids being represented any more exuberantly than you're doing it here.
Thanks, appreciate that.
I'll check this out, and there may be ways through groups that I'm involved with that we may be able to help. So.
Well, thanks, appreciate that. Any supports and contacts and conversations would be great.
Good. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Send us a reminder about September through my office.
I
And
will.
we'll see if we can't get a table or
Oh,
some
that'd be lovely.
dancers out to the event at Hidden Valley.
Well, we've got some hot off the press save the date cards.
Perfect.
Came off the press today. Bob has one, and I'm sure he's looking for, some company, so thank you.
Thank you.
And a dance partner for you.
Okay. It's been a while since I read a resolution. And I don't know who that is. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the following council meeting minutes be adopted as printed and circulated. Regular council, January 27th, 2020, and special council, February 11th, 2020. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. So, reports for information only. The first up is the Huntsville Library Board, and that would be Councillor Thompson, who is not here, and we don't have an alternate, but the minutes are in your packages. If there's any questions, we can try to answer them. No questions? Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Worship. I don't know if this can be answered here, but I understand there's been more issues over there with sewer backups and stuff. I just don't know what the heck's going on with.
I think I'll let the CAO answer that one.
Thank you, Your Worship. There have been some issues that have been experienced over at the library with respect to sewer backups. So our maintenance staff have been working on site since Friday night. It is in the process of being cleaned up and addressed. It will not have any interruption with respect to the services at the library, but we have had some issues most recently, so they are being taken care of. They're in the process of being fixed, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, the next is the BIA Board of Management minutes. That was their AGM from January of 2020, I think, not 19, but 19 minutes, so except the minutes from the AGM the previous year. And they elect a new board. Any questions on the BIA? Seeing none. Committee of Adjustment and Councillor Stone.
The meeting was relatively uneventful. There was one application that was, that we universally went opposed to the staff directions, but it was better for the water quality now and in the future, and less visual impact as what would have happened if we had followed staff's directions. But aside from that, uneventful.
Questions? Seeing none? That's great. Municipal accommodation tax. I have a little bit of an update. The chair of the MAT Accommodation Board actually thought that this would be a good news story to share. The first intake for applications to that fund happened late 2019, and one of the groups that was awarded was Explorer's Edge, and they had a plan to attract new hotel stays this winter, primarily from late January to March break. And the program was proposed to attract about 250 room nights in the dead of this winter. And it's been so successful that at the last report, 509 new room nights have been generated. So this was a group venture between Explorer's Edge and the MAP board, and it did exactly what they had hoped it would do. And one of the other bonuses from that was that when you booked your 2 nights, I think you had to have 2 room nights back to back, you also got gift cards, which were for Huntsville businesses, whether it be restaurants or retail or whatever. So it's generated some nice winter business for us, and the MAP board's very happy how that program turned out. So good news story there. Okay, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Armour and seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that the Operations and Protective Services Committee meeting minutes dated January 29th, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated, with the exception of recommendation OPS 6-20 to be pulled and voted on separately. Counselor Thompson is not here. Counselor Armour, do you have anything you want to highlight from that meeting, other than the pulled motion?
No, Your Worship, it was a fairly quick meeting, but this poll motion we can speak about, you know.
Okay. All in favor of the minutes? That's carried. So I have a resolution moved by Counselor Armour and seconded by Counselor Weed. Be it resolved that Council approves option 2 as outlined in Report Ops 2020-02 to remove 36 streetlights and replace with 10 streetlights at intersections and corners of Deerhurst Highlands Drive. And I think Councillor Withey asked for this one to be pulled, so I will go to you first, sir.
Sir, thank you, Your Worship. I was pondering this after the meeting, and I note that in the minutes, it doesn't give us the dollar amounts that are in play here, and I live out that way, so I drive by this street all the time, and it's kind of, no other streets out there have streetlights, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and there's not very many residents on it. I understand that when the road was put in, the developer put up these fancy lights. And then all of a sudden, we become caretakers of them as we assume that area. I would like to bring forward an amendment or maybe a new motion. I don't know how you have to do it. I'm sure the Rules Committee will tell me exactly what's going on. But I would recommend removing the lights and not replacing them. And according to the report that we had at committee, it would save us some $70,000. It would be dark sky friendly. It would not impact, like any other road in that area, it would not impact traffic or anything like that. It's such a funny thing at night to see it sort of this little string of lights over this hill and complete darkness all around it. And you know, where I live and up in the areas, nobody has streetlights. So why we're spending taxpayers' dollars on lighting up a mostly vacant street, and if the lights are breaking and falling down, I don't know why we're doing that. I would recommend, if we have to take them down, but save the money and not put anything back.
Colleen, is there anything that you can add in this? Like, I'm not sure whether this was something that's already been put out to tender or not, or?
Through you, Your Worship. So this has not gone to tender based on this motion becoming, the report becoming ratified. Then we would go to tender to hire for whichever option is chosen.
And is the timing such that we could send this back to the Ops Committee
If you wish.
to explore what Councillor Withey's suggesting?
The option that Councillor Withey's suggesting is one of the options listed. So, yeah, we could bring it back to committee.
Councillor Alcock?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think I would support that, sending it back to committee, only because I apologize, I wasn't at the last ops meeting. And so I just didn't have, and in the minutes didn't show a lot of background. I probably should have, I didn't know what your amendment was. So I'm not quite sure what the whole rationale was for the removal, replacement, and the costs and all of that. It might make a lot of sense, Councillor Withey, but if timing is not critical, then I would appreciate, just from my perspective, having that discussion.
Councillor Withey?
I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. You looked at me like as if I was going to like lose it over here, but no, it's fine. It was one of the original recommendations in the report. It wasn't, we didn't discuss it for a long time, and then, you know, it's sort of afterthought in my mind. I thought, well, wait a minute. As I drive by every day, I'm going, oh, look at all these lights, and you know, we've got a dark sky policy. There's nobody really lives there. There's a handful of people on that street, and there's 36 of them. And we were going to replace them with 10 at $120,000. You know, removing them, I see option 3 on the original thing was remove streetlights and replace with nothing. And that estimated cost was 50 grand. So there's 70 grand that we would not expend on.
Councillor Armour first.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think with True Nutrition, I think some of those lights were put back in the early 80s, I believe, or late 80s is when they put in, so that's why they want to replace them. I think the best thing to do would send it back to committee and have a better report on it to see if there's something mandating us to replace those lights in that area. Instead of just voting on tonight to defeat it completely. So I like the motion that we defer back to the next office meeting.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I like to agree with everyone around the table that it come back to ops for further consideration and discussion.
So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that council refers recommendation Ops 6-20 to the appropriate committee in March 2020 to further explore option 3 as identified in the report. All in favor? It's carried. So what do I do with this? Just flip it. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. Be it resolved that the Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes dated January 30th, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. And that was one of our quickest meetings in history. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Worship. I was speaking earlier with Councillor Wiebe, and we were speaking about our recollection of that meeting. And in that meeting, I believe we spoke about reconstituting a surplus land ad hoc committee that we actually voted on. And I don't see it anywhere in this report or anywhere, and I see the clerk nodding in agreement. So I just was wondering where that vaporized to.
The resolution actually said that the report will be coming back to the next meeting.
Does that say that in
No,
here somewhere?
yeah, but that's not this meeting, that's the next committee meeting.
Oh, okay.
So that is
Thank you.
underway. All in favor? That's carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that the Community Services Committee meeting minutes dated January 30th, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated, with the exception of recommendation COM 3-20 to be pulled and voted on separately. Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Terziano. Again, we had a fairly quick meeting, and we discussed Kent Park. We also discussed, as you'll see, the collections, but the main item has been pulled. So if there are any questions on the others, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm sure people are eager to get to the next item. So
Questions on the main meeting minutes? All in favor? That's carried. So, on the resolution that was pulled, we now have a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, from Greg Pilling and Nick Storer, Race Director for Trisport. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Wanted to provide some additional information, so I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I'll try not to take too much of your time, but we'll briefly go through the background history of Ironman, the participation numbers, demographics, community benefits, the alternative routes that were provided, the four major themes that were heard at the public meetings, and then actions for 2020 for the proposed route and the next steps. So if it's okay, we could do questions at the end, if that works for everybody. And hopefully this will be addressed during the presentation, if you have any other questions. So a brief history here. Ironman is the the only Ironman branded event in Ontario. It's one of 5 Ironman branded events in Canada, and Trisport event owns and produces the event along with 6 other triathlons in Ontario and the Iron Girl race. And my apologies, I should backtrack here and introduce Nick, who is sitting with me. He is the owner of Trisport, and he is the producer of the Ironman event here in Huntsville. So this is their 13th year coming up, and currently right now we have presented 3 run options to the public at our open house. The current contract we're in right now has 2 more years on it for 2020 this year and 21, and then there's an option to renew for 3 additional years. Some of the participation numbers, so you'll see here, just to give you an idea on the amount of athletes that are participating in the event. Each athlete brings approximately 2 support workers with them. So you can just make those numbers a lot bigger. But you'll see in 2017 is when it came to the Canada Summit Centre, and that was the peak at that time for the attendance for the race, and that has continued to climb. In 2019, the race sold out in March, and for the 2020 race, the event sold out November 5th, 2019. So demographics, 65% men, 35% women, average age 40 to 44, with an average income of 150 to 175,000. Primarily Ontario, but they do come from other provinces in the States, as you'll see a small breakdown there. And over 18 countries have been represented, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, China, France, to be some of the predominant ones. The benefits to the community from hosting the event, just some quick highlights on that is $10,000 to community groups from Trisport through Nick's company. They spend over $40,000 in the community to produce the event. Muskoka hosts a Swim for Hospice on the Saturday, raises $3,000 for hospice. Great benefit for the volunteerism, sense of pride in our healthy, active community. They have the kids fun run, the Ironman Kids Run on the Saturday as well, and it's a great start for children to begin that lifelong active lifestyle.
That also raises over $3,000 for the Kinsman Club. We donate all our registration money back to the Kinsman Club.
Stimulate the local economy. Just a note here that it identifies how roads can support economic development, because obviously this race it uses many kilometers of roads, and it advertises Huntsville to the world and attracts growth of business and residents. So the public engagement process and results. We'll start with the process. The communications that went out to the public, we had an ad in the Forester on February 13th to announce the open house. Nick and I had a radio interview with the Moose on February 17th, and also had 30 commercials out to advertise the open house. We did direct mail to 1,522 residents and businesses that are in the affected region of the proposed Burnell Road closure. We held the open house on February 20th. We had 2 sessions, 1 to 3 and 6 to 8, to try and give everybody an opportunity to come by. We discussed 4 routes, 3 routes that are presented today, and the 4th discussion was suggestions from the public. That was the 4th route, was just looking for suggestions. We also solicited comments on myhuntsville.ca from February 7th to 21st. We had a consultation with the Burnell Mart, who opposes the closure of Burnell Road, and we consulted with Riverside Baptist Church, resulting in support of the proposed route. Overall, we had 37 people attend the open house and 6 comments from My Huntsville that had actually 190 visits to the webpage. From the information we were given, 18 of the people that attended the open house were in the affected area. We discussed the 4 route options and had the negative, positive themes identified, and we kind of grouped them into 4 categories based on the feedback: negative reactions to the route, positive reactions to the route, safety suggestions for the athletes, and safety suggestions for the residents. So the Muskoka Road 3 route, which would be the route that was held, that was used in 2019, that crosses Highway 11. That was one of our options. These are comments from the public. So like this route, lots of shade. It is a great event to have here. Muskoka Road 3 route is my favorite. Notify people that are affected. Okay, but leave Main and Brunel open. Runners like to run downtown, does not block people in. Negative reactions. The route hurt local downtown businesses. This route has more drawbacks than the proposed route for 2020. Downtown traffic was a nightmare, gridlock, need to close Highway 11 ramps at Muskoka Road 3, and need MTO permission for that. Some possible mitigation strategies for the Muskoka Road 3 route would be to have Trisport, BIA, and the Chamber work together to develop strategies to engage downtown businesses in the race and to develop strategy to increase and measure the impact to the business. Long-term, investigate the cost and benefit of a bridge, and Kelly had mentioned that earlier on in her presentation. It's really been brought up multiple times. A bridge for runners and cyclists to use at the gridlock intersections that would allow for traffic and the race to coexist. Second option was the 2-loop course that was used back in 2017. So this route does not cross Highway 11, does not require road closure, ramp closures. And positive reactions to this was it does not lock people in. Lots of people and supporters to watch the race in downtown and support businesses that are open and welcoming. Best route to date avoids Maple Heights neighborhood. Negative reactions. EMS will be slow, less benefit, not as many people go downtown, and then the LCBO area traffic congestion. The 2020 proposed route, the one that was presented at Community Services Committee, is Brunel Road to North Mary Lake Road, and that is the route right there. It's a 2-loop course. Some positive reactions to this was the road closure is only for a short time and not the whole race. Road closure, a must to hold a safe race, a sacrifice for sure, but well worth it. The route makes sense because of the road construction, best choice for this year, and a small price to pay for a big payoff. Here's some continuation of the positives. No one is denied access to emergency or essential services. Support this route. Have done due diligence to find the best route for most. Impact is far-reaching. We volunteer and have a great time. Amazing event, inspiring. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input. Negative reactions to the 2020 route. Being locked in is unacceptable. Interferes with church and summertime. Number of residents inconvenienced is too many. Extended time of roadway closure is too long. So some proposed to be able to mitigate the negative reactions. We have decreased the full closure time to 3 hours and 45 minutes from the original 6 hours and 15 minutes that was in the staff report to Community Services last month. Provide North Mary Lake Road residents access to leave their homes through Lockview. So this was a slight change in the exit point for all the residents down North Mary Lake, Riverlea, that area there. They're all able to leave their home. North Mary Lake Road remains open. Residents would leave through Lockview Road and exit on Brunel and have to go south for the detour during the closure times. But this does reduce the impact of the affected residents that were landlocked. Originally was 491 residents, is now 260 residents. Any in the affected area of Brunel Road to have a location to go to for coffee, tea, and snacks will be available to accommodate those that need to go to town earlier for those that cannot get back home until after the road is closed. So this would be something that Trisport and Ironman would put on in the town for residents that are affected, so they have somewhere to go. I think you have to have Wi-Fi service at any welcoming center you have nowadays, so we definitely have Wi-Fi service available. And we provide free overnight parking in a municipal lot for those that need to park their car the night before the race, if that's going to affect their commute to work on Sunday. Ensure good communication and planning with sufficient notice. Encourage residents to cheer on racers, volunteer and support the race. Encourage everyone to showcase our great community. Be clear what is open and closed so residents can plan. Use technology to communicate with the racers and the residents. Be clear with race producers about noise bylaw exemption and monitor. And have a parking plan for racers and families to avoid, and there's a little bit of a typo there that we're just missing, to avoid the residential side streets for parking, and ensure that they're safe for emergency vehicles to get down. There's been noted from the public with safety concerns for the training runs, the practice runs that are leading in, leading up to the race, and we do get a lot of visitors that come up here and do attempt the course before the actual race day. Address participant and spectator parking at the Canada Summit Centre, and race route lanes not clearly marked. So as proposals to mitigate that is council to request active road transportation strategy for the biking on Brunel Road. Clearly mark parking at the Canada Summit Centre and investigate shuttle options for future years, and clearly mark the race route versus the driving route. More concerns that were from the public engagement. Emergency vehicle access is a concern, and part of that mitigation will be ensure EMS vehicle access at all times. They are part of the SEAT process and part of the SEAT team, so they're well aware of the event and have approved the proposed run at this time. Family emergencies to non-911 calls, or collaborate with EMS and ensure that the response times are similar and they're aware of everything. Lack of a bypass using West Browns Road. So town is not suggesting we use West Browns Road, but suggests capital improvements in the future so that West Browns potentially could be a potential detour in the future. Road improvements for increased cycling and options during non-race events. And that is investigate shuttle vehicle for residents in future years. And one of the big concerns is residents being locked in their homes. Some of the next steps in the summary. Race producers will work with staff to implement the 2020 actions that developed out of the public meeting engagement process. Council approves the proposed 2020 route as endorsed by SEAT, and administration works with the race producer to bring back evaluation and recommendations for the 2021 race route and planning in the fall of 2020. Are there any questions at this time?
Thanks, Greg, Nick, for that. Okay, I'm sure there's going to be questions. Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Worship. I don't really think anybody's against having triathlons here. I think that's proven to be a benefit. The issues I had at committee is that it seemed to be sort of thrown at us as you better approve this now because we got to get going, which I didn't appreciate. As I understand it, the reason for the closure is that the bikes and the runners are at the same place at the same time. And is there not an option, because I believe this has happened in the past, where the runners go one route and the bikes go a different direction, so they're not causing a complete shutdown of a road or an area because they're all at the same place at the same time? And has that, I didn't see that as an option here. I don't know if it was brought up at the meeting. I was away when it was on. Wondering about that. Thanks.
So the option 2, the one that goes out across Highway 11, that actually doesn't have the runners and the bikes on the same course. So we were asked to find a new route to avoid Main and Center. So because of the construction next year, we can't go east of the swing bridge. So we looked at different options, and Brunel Road was that option. So yes, there'll be runners and bikes on the same road until all the bikes are back at about 1 o'clock. Then we'll just have runners on just one side of the road. So our concern was, safety concern is, we'll have bikes on the road and two-way runners. So they'll have to run down Brunel Road, North Mary Lake Road, come back. So there'll be two-way runners on that road. So just because of the nature of the volume of athletes on the road, that we're hoping to not have any cars there, just for safety concerns for both the athletes and the residents or motorists.
Thank you for that, but so there was no other option of splitting them up? I appreciate what you said about the Muskoka Road 3 route. You know, a couple times Browns Road was brought up. I mean, couldn't you start the bikes from Deerhurst and come up and finish there and then run, I don't know, some other way?
So
it's a nice little nature trail there.
So the bikes are
The
very
runners?
expensive, so they need like the best roads possible.
Okay, they
so,
could run through the west
So yeah, unfortunately, we can't cross the runners across the bikes. So logistically, we can't ever have the runners or the bikers crossing each other, just because the nature of speed and you know, just collisions and such. So we had to take into account of runners always being on one side, bikers always being on the other. So this was really the only option that we had that didn't have a conflict of bikers and runners with each other.
Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. First off, I'd like to thank you for making all the concessions. It's nice to see from 490 down to 260, I think it was. That's great to see. My question is for those 260 people or residents that could be locked in their homes, and there is an emergency where 911 doesn't need to be called, but they do need to get out. Is there any concessions made if they come up to an intersection with the OPP sitting there saying, what's your concern? Like, you can't go grocery shopping, but you need to get to the hospital because you stuck a nail through your foot or something. Is concessions like that made?
Correct. So there'll be OPP at each intersection. I've already been working with the OPP on suggested and proposed locations for them. So exactly, they'll be at those intersections. So if somebody needs some sort of service, then OPP can help them get to where they need to be or figure out a plan as it kind of arises. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but they will be there definitely at all the major intersections, and we'll definitely have residents notices and everything. So hopefully we don't cross that bridge, but yes.
Councillor Alcott.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate the presentation. I wasn't at that meeting. For sure, like everybody else, I support the Ironman, absolutely. And I do appreciate the concessions, so I won't repeat that. But the one with respect to the hours, I think the original proposal was 6 hours, and now it's a little under 4. So was that, at the open house, was that something that was raised by a lot of people, or is that, have you heard that online or whatever about the hours?
So I worked those hours down. So originally, we were looking for a closure for a longer period of time, just because the nature of the time the race starts. So when I looked at it, motorists can still go south, or they can still use Brunel Road while the bikes are on, because we've done that in the past. So we pulled that closure in to 9:30 once all the bikes start coming back, and then once that first runner hits the road, then we'll have that closure. So we've shortened that time period, and there'll definitely be some lane restrictions or some probably delays, but the road will be open from 7 to 9:30. So that was the change, the early morning.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. One of the big concerns I heard from a lot of the residents was some of them simply are unable to make other arrangements for work, and they are directly, negatively impacted financially. So we talk about how great this is for the community, and it's a boon, et cetera, but there may actually be people who are directly affected in a really negative way. And I'm just wondering what measures or strategies can be implemented to help those people who simply are paying an actual financial price for that day of, let's say, missing work.
Do you want that one? Do you want it? Oh, okay. So Greg and I have been kind of working on that, and that's why we offered that location where they can go and have coffee and tea if they need to leave earlier. There'll be lots of communication ahead of time. Obviously, we've already started. We do residence notices weeks before, signs, radio advertisements. So it'll be well documented and well presented to the public. And if there is a direct concern, they can certainly call us and we can work with them and maybe make some sort of arrangement on a case-by-case basis if that is a problem, or we can try to work a way to get them to work. If we definitely don't want to put anybody out of work.
Okay, good. As long as that message is out in the community, I actually couldn't, bear to see one person be
No.
directly affected like that, so.
Yeah,
thanks for
100%,
that.
yes.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. As the councillor of this ward, I've heard, quite a few comments about it, not only by email, also by phone, and I have to admit that no one's really negative against it. They all like it. It's the fact of being landlocked. They feel like they're losing something there. And I think it's because of there's multiple events going through that. And this being in the summertime, there's going to be more residents and that in the area. But I just want to make sure you know that they're not negative against Tri-Sport or about the Ironman itself, but it's just more of how they feel about where they're trapped in.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
No others? I got a couple quick questions. Did you have another?
If you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Go.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my comment would be that we've kind of learned a lot here. In future, we need to get out in front of this stuff and anticipate some of the things that have risen here. And I think we need to be more consultative with the people that are affected and try to get things out earlier so we have time to, so we don't get this, these situations where we're feeling like it's, we got to do something and we got to do it now and we've got the answers and you're going to have to deal with it. So I just wanted to make that point, as well as reiterate that I'm not against triathlon at all.
Councillor Alpert?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize if I'm asking something that you've gone through a million times, but the reason for the change from last year is that we were getting people off the main drag, right, the main street, that was a big part of it. And my follow-up to that would be, so we looked at all other options, taking the runners, the athletes off the main drag maybe and taking them up a street and then up further maybe to Lorne and back on the main street, so towards the west. Was that something that was looked at? Because that might be a little less disruptive.
Through Your Worship. We did. The reason for the request from the C team was due to the congestion that has occurred in town. Trying to go from, kind of just as a quick example, Town Hall to the Fire Hall was taking up to an hour just across Main and Center. So that was the request that was put on Tri-Sport, and Nick specifically was to find a new route. The C team was together in early December, I believe it was December 2nd. And we had, Chief McWilliam there, Chief Hernan, and John Paul Graham, and District Muskoka was there with Nick, and we looked at every option. It's to fit what Ironman can handle as a course as well. So it's not just, I came up with a bunch of great ideas of John Street, but it doesn't work for the course because of the steep hill when you get to Shea Road. We tried to get out to Golf Course Road. We tried to get out to Muskoka Road 3. But at some point, we're going to be crossing traffic in Center Street. So this seemed to be the least impactful on the downtown core and to try and free up moving of traffic through the C team. So it was a very lengthy process. Nick had been looking for routes. I think we tasked you with that in early October. Yep. Just as he said he was going to announce his registration sales. And we said, well, this is part of the package. So he's been working on that for months before we sat down. And unfortunately, we looked at Lorne as most recently as the open house, and we had multiple discussions on that as well. And unfortunately, once you get off Center Street, the steepness of those hills change what the athletes can handle.
They're tough, but they're not that tough. Muskoka's already known as a hard course. It's probably one of the hardest ones in the world, just because of the nature of the hills and the terrain out there. So I find too is this course it showcases Muskoka as well. North Mary Lake Road's gorgeous. Brunel Road's gorgeous once the trees are filled in. The runners, we've had, I think we've had 11 courses over the 12 years. So we've changed. We've run on Highway 60, which isn't very appealing. We've run out past the industrial area and Kitchen Road and Cairns Road, not very appealing. So we also want to have a nice, appealing route for the runners to come back, and nice shade and nice a Muskoka feel, I guess you could say.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Mayor Teresiano. Through you, is this also because we were looking at like options where like the streetscape's going to happen in the next coming years? We're looking at a route that sort of is sustainable for say a couple of years, and then if we do decide to go the next 3 years, are we eventually maybe going to look to go back out when the construction's all done out towards Highway 60 where it maybe was?
Through you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship. Yes, the streetscape has been part of the process. The main reason for the change is we've tried multiple attempts to cross Main and Center the last 2 years with a 2-loop course and a 1-loop course. And unfortunately, it was the congestion that was the primary driving factor. But as Nick alluded to earlier, he's on year 12. He's had 11 different run courses. Difficult for them consistency would be great for them, be great for everybody involved. So that would be the long-term goal, would be consistency. But because we're doing another new route, we wanted to have an opportunity to come back with feedback after the 2020 attempt, if that is successful in going down Brunel Road.
And we're always open to tweaks, and if we find in 2020 that it's not working in certain areas, we can maybe make a change here and there. We're definitely flexible, and we've experienced that over the last 12 years. So we definitely want to work with everybody.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Mayor Teresiano. You sort of answered my question, but the question was going to be, are we going to be sitting back here in a year saying, how do we get around this idea of closing Brunel Road completely? Because I don't know if I can stomach it once, and I don't know if I'm going to be asked to stomach it again next year. So are we going to be back here next year?
I hope not.
Through you, Your Worship, hopefully with all of our mitigation, hopefully we're coming back here in the fall with very positive, there's an impact on the community. It's going to impact 260 homes. That's tough to mitigate that for those 3 hours and 15 minutes. That is a tough pill to swallow for those residents. But hopefully we can get ahead of it. Great communication, options for the residents, and hopefully we can mitigate that so that we don't have to do that.
Well, just to follow up, I guess I appreciate the fact that the real key is safety. And if the OPP and the paramedics and the fire are all giving the green light, then I hesitate to stand in their way and tell them that they don't know how to do their jobs. So I'm getting there.
Councillor Armour.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just the first question, moving the event to the summertime, is that way it's sold out so quickly, the 1,800 runners like that? Is it the time of year?
I think it's a combination of that and moving the race downtown. Once we moved the event to July, and that was because we had the Ironman in August, the full Ironman, when we had both in that same year in 2015. We got a lot of great feedback for the July event where athletes were able to bring their families. They can stay longer. They can make it they call it a racecation. So where they plan around their whole season, and our event is usually, they call it an A race, so it'd be their race that they're training for throughout the whole year. So they found that a lot of the feedback that we got was that they could come and stay longer, bring their family. In September, our numbers, we were after Labor Day, so it's difficult. People are back to school, they're back to work. It just didn't really fit into their schedule as much. So we also put on 7 or 8 other races as well, so it fits into our schedule and it fits into Ironman's global schedule. So they try to keep a schedule tight, more specifically North America and other surrounding events. There's races in Michigan and Syracuse and Mont-Tremblant, so we have to be mindful with their schedule as well too. So, but I think July has definitely benefited registration numbers for sure.
Thank you. One more, and this is with the 260 homes that are going to be affected. Will there be another notice go out to those people with contact information, phone numbers, et cetera, and the location of your coffee, tea, and donut bar?
Yeah.
Yeah, through Your Worship. we'll get full communication out with another direct mail letter to them, as well as we'll have social media, Ironman websites, radio ads.
Physical signs on course 2 weeks prior.
Councillor Weed.
Thanks, Your Worship. One more. There's also the idea of the people beyond, or the cottagers and residents that are beyond, that may not travel into town that much, may not tune into the radio. They may not be part of the direct mail, but on the day, they find themselves totally snarled. So what's the strategy for the folks that are further afield that end up being affected negatively that day?
Through you, Your Worship. The way Canada Post works, it's actually, they break it down into SS1, SS2, their codes. It's a large swath of area that we'll be doing mail-outs to. So it'll go to everybody down south and
all of Lake of Bays and through all the way through Dorset as well. So we mail it along the bike route as well.
So that covers a direct mail campaign, but then there's also warning signs that are up, as Nick said, 2 weeks in advance. And it'll explain the detours and the routes that are available. So they're very, very large signs with notification to try and get those that aren't reading that piece of paper in their mailbox.
Okay, I have a resolution to read. Moved by Councillor Weeb and seconded by Councillor Stone, be it resolved that the run race route for Ironman 70.3 and the associated road closures attached as Appendix 1 to Report CS 2020-04 be approved. Final questions? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. How about a 5-minute break? Let's take 5. let's.
I just didn't see anybody's names around the table.
Okay, council, we're back. I have a resolution. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the Development Services Committee meeting minutes dated February 12, 2020, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can be brief. I know we still have a long agenda ahead of us. It was a fairly uneventful meeting. We approved 4 zoning application amendments, and we denied 1. Staff recommended the denial, and there was lack of clarity as to the use that was being proposed for that item. So we agreed with staff on that one. We approved site plan application approval for proposed new housing development on Florence Street. The housing development itself had been approved many years ago, but we finally approved a site plan application. As well as we approved a road closing, municipal road closing for the Summit Group development on Town Line Road East. And there were a number of questions around that, but it certainly seemed to make sense, and staff was recommending that we do that. We had a request from MTO for an exemption to our noise bylaw, which we also approved. I can't remember the date, but it's not a long period of time. And we also approved the proposed project plan and to create a new community-based tourism brand for the municipality. Part of that will be to outline a process and design of community wayfinding and, looking at fabrication and installation. All to say that we approved the staff to secure the services of a design firm to complete that. But so they can issue the request for proposals, but they will be coming back to committee before we accept the firm. I think that was pretty much it.
All right, questions? Councillor Withey.
A question on the, because I've been asked this question by public people, the Florence Street approval, does that fall into the attainable housing envelope? Is it a?
As far as I know, I'm going to turn that over to Kirsten, but as far as I know, it's one of those, Councillor Withey, that was approved way before our time, and I do not believe it does. I believe that they're looking at market value ownership, right? I believe our director is nodding in agreement. So.
Oh, I can't see her from here, but I'll take your word for it.
She is, so there we go.
Kirsten, would you like to comment out loud?
Out loud. Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, we don't have any details as to whether or not there will be an affordable component in that development, so I would concur with Councillor Alcock's assessment.
If I may comment, thank you for that, Director Maxwell. So it may be, who knows? It would be nice, certainly, and questions appreciated.
Are there any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, I have a rather long resolution to read here. I'll get this on the table first. Yeah. Okay, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that council approve a change in committee structure from the current divisional committees to a general committee, and further that the following bylaws be changed to reflect the proposed structure. Procedural bylaw, delegation of authority bylaw, appointing bylaw, appointment of a committee of adjustment, designation of a site plan control area bylaw, and further that resolutions 13-19 and 77-19 be rescinded, and further that the 2020-2022 council and committee calendars attached to Report Corp 2020-10 be approved, and further that resolution 285-28 be rescinded, and further that the 2022 committees of council terms of reference as attached to Corp 2020-10 be approved, and further that resolution 286-28 be rescinded, and further that council approves the appointment of Councillor Nancy Alcock as deputy mayor and Councillor Jason Fitzgerald as the alternate deputy mayor. Crystal.
Thank you. The report is in front of you. I do have a couple of things to highlight. So one is the general nature of all of this is to change from the structure that we're currently sitting with, so with all of the different committees, to more of a general committee structure. So that's what all these changes are for, as well as to make changes with the new head of council and the new member of council. A couple things I do want to note for the next month is that the time for the Committee of Adjustment meeting and the Planning Committee meeting, which was Development Services, they will remain the same, as advertisements already had to go out in regards to those meetings, so they will remain the same for this month, and then they'll be changing moving forward. As well, for the March cycle, the General Committee meeting is being proposed to move to Wednesdays moving forward. However, for March, we're looking at Thursday. So that's a bit of a change. As well, from your package, one change to note for the February cycle is that our Corporate Services Committee for this week coming up has moved from 1:30 to 11 a.m. So those are the major changes. The amendments are to our terms of reference, our 2020 to 2022 council and committee calendar, and to the 6 bylaws that were noted. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Councillor Schumacher.
So this is newer to me, obviously, as being one of the newer members on council. I know this had been done in the past. So you have a chair of general committee, but then I know where I'm used to, like community services, Jonathan would chair that particular aspect. So is there just going to be one chair for general committee, or are we going to rotate chairs through for each aspect?
I'll take that one. We are going to rotate chairs. We're going to try to still maintain the same structure where we had council chairs and their directors having a relationship and setting what they want to bring forward. So we will have a general committee chair, but when we get to each section, the chair and the director, so we'll have like 4 little meetings within a meeting is how we'll go.
Second question. So currently with community services, we do have committee members, which I think is a valuable aspect. I understand we are going to have conversation with them about sitting on other committees. Is that correct?
I have spoken to the appointed members of community services, and we'll be following up with them with other ways that they can continue to serve. We still have the same community service committee this month, so they'll be there. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, feedback from the staff. How do they feel about going back to this type of structure and being committed on one day every month? I'm just wondering if or any feedback from them at all.
Actually, probably the initial driver of this was from staff. I think the idea of preparing 3 different agendas and 3 different sets of meetings is actually more work than preparing one for one general committee. So I think staff's okay with it. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess following up on that question, this is a bit unlike our last general committee where we just had one chair and then went through all of the different departments. So Are staff aware of any other municipalities that have a similar structure that what we're talking about, or are we cutting edge on that? Like where we're rotating the chairs through?
So currently in the area, I'm not aware of any. However, this was similar to something that we had done in the past. So a few terms prior, this was something very similar where the chair of that area would still chair that section of the meeting. So similar to, it's kind of a mix of what we had before and what we had had previously before that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Your Worship. It won't come as a surprise to you that I do not support this change to general committee for a number of reasons. I'm okay with the rest of it. Like, want to be clear about that, but I find I have worked under a general committee situation before. I find it's more difficult for me having a business to have longer meetings in one day rather than splitting meetings up over time. And every time that I've sat on a committee, or whether it be the LIN or somewhere where it was general committee, it always switched to divided up committees, not the other way around. So I don't see it as a progressive way to govern necessarily, so I won't be supporting this motion.
Okay. Any other questions? I have an amendment. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the following be added after paragraphs 3 and 7 on February 28th, 2020. Crystal, you're going to speak to that?
Yes. So we just had to make an administrative amendment as our terms of reference rather than it being rescinded now. We just needed the terms of reference and 2 of the motions that were passed in regards to our council or our committee members for community services not to be rescinded now so that they could still attend the meetings and everything still remain the same for Thursday of this week.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment? It's carried. So then the main motion as amended reads exactly the same as I read it a few minutes ago. All in favor? And that's carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy and seconded by Councillor Weed. Be it resolved that Council approve the reserve transfers outlined in Report Corp 2020-14, and further that Council approve the variances for 2019 to the approved budget as outlined in Report Corp 2020-14, and those are reserves to the library. And Julia is here if there's any questions on that. Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that Council supports the following joint projects in principle as outlined in Report CAO 2020-06 for potential joint submission with area municipalities, District of Muskoka, for future intakes of the Municipal Modernization Program, expansion of broadband, Regional Economic Development Strategy, Climate Change Strategy, Full Roads Infrastructure Review, Fire Services Review, Library Services Review, Planning Services Review, Emergency Management Services Review, Information Technology Services Review, and Procurement Services Review. Madam CAO, would you like to speak to this one?
I would, thank you, Your Worship. So as Council will recall, back in November, a report was brought forward that spoke to the Municipal Modernization Program that was initiated through the provincial government. At that time, we had, Council had agreed to submit an application for intake 1 of that program for a Community Services Master Plan and operational review. We have not yet heard back from the province about that, but we are reaching the end of February, so I'm not so confident that we're going to be approved, but we still have yet to hear from the province. One thing that was noted in the communication from the province was that there'd be future intakes. One thing that we did notice with the first intake is that there was a lot of support and attention provided by the province for any joint projects that were submitted. All 27 joint projects that were submitted in intake 1 were approved by the province. So that speaks loud and clear to us that they're really focused on seeing municipalities work together on these programs. And we've been having discussions at the CAO level about what particular programs we could potentially submit applications for future intakes. So it was decided amongst the Muskoka CAOs that each of us would go back and prepare a list. We would obviously focus on the strategic initiatives and plans that council had set, and we would bring forth a list of projects that could be considered for future intakes. It's further noted in the report that the District of Muskoka has initiated through Chair Klink a municipal modernization committee that is comprised of all lower area mayors as well as the district chair. And they will be looking at things such as municipal modernization and where we can perhaps have joint applications move forward. So in order to prepare and submit that information and so that Her Worship can take that information forward, I have come up with a list that again was summarized by reviewing the strategic plan. And I have noted each section in there that's referenced in the document. So the list is before you today. I did not put any preference with respect to priority. That is an option for council if they wish to give that direction that the mayor can take forward. But that is a list that's before you this evening. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And I think it is important that council gives some consideration to what projects are our highest priorities, because when the district groups gets together, I know the CAOs have all talked about their priorities, but we need to set some through council. Councillor Alcott.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Denise. It's an extensive list for sure, so a lot of work. I guess the first question I would have is, I support this for sure, because I think it's important as our mayor go with some direction. Each municipality will be doing a similar exercise, I'm assuming, right? So they'll be coming up with their own list. Okay, so my follow-up question is, the first meeting when you go to the modernization committee, I'm assuming that you'll all work through, and that's one way that the priorities will be identified, because there's no way, well, I don't think it's going to get through all of those items, but that would be one way that we would, you know, if we all identify, for example, climate change strategy, then presumably that would go right to the top as number one item. And is that your thinking, that that might be the way it would work?
Yeah, and I think it'll depend on how each municipality prioritizes, and there'll probably be only an opportunity to apply for one grant. And there may not be consensus at the district level, but there seems to be more success if they're joint applications versus single ones. So I think we can pass this because this is our list, but we can certainly think about it in time for when we get together at general committee or the next council meeting to assign priorities to them.
And just to add, it certainly doesn't preclude the town of Huntsville from also submitting another application. So, for example, if we decide that in conjunction with Lake of Bays, we want to conduct a fire services review, we can still do a joint application. We currently have joint services with Lake of Bays, so we can still submit that application. So it certainly wouldn't restrict us from doing that on our own. I haven't heard back from the other CAOs, but I can tell you there was a lot of focus on the expansion of broadband. That was certainly a high priority that was identified by the other areas. And obviously a hot topic is the roads review, because that's been on the radar for quite some time. So until such time as we hear back from the other areas, I'm not sure what their list looks like.
Councillor Weed?
Thank you, Worship. That brings up an interesting point, which has been on my mind, and that is, I think expansion of broadband is critical. But I also, of when I look at the list, that's the only one that it seems we would have to be partnering in some way with an outside firm. Like we would be reliant on their infrastructure or, their processes. So I'm just wondering how that would look for us to partner essentially with an outside business. Has any thought been given to that?
Thank you, through your worship. So discussions have taken place about the expansion of broadband. We definitely would have to partner with an outside organization. I think the review would be conducted to determine where those spots are that require service, what the options are, Broadband is, there's been recently a huge funding announcement through the province with respect to funding it, and we have heard from local companies that they are actually applying for those grants. With broadband, unless there's a revenue to be generated, it's very hard for a company to determine that they're going to go down that road with 10 houses. But the most recent funding that was announced through the province actually focused on those outer areas and was working their way in. So it would be a review of where those holes are, where the connectivities need to be made. And it would definitely have to be a project that would be partnered regionally, for sure.
All in favor? That's carried. A resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that bylaw numbers 2020-16 to 2020-29 inclusive be reported and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 24th day of February. Questions? Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was looking at the fireworks bylaw, and in the recommendation, I was kind of, based on Sir draft is attached, includes the following provisions. The first point is consumer fireworks may be set off from Friday through Sunday. And I was thinking about that, and the next recommendation has hours attached to it. We didn't put any hours on Friday to Sunday. Like, is that Friday morning at 12:01 a.m. till Sunday at 12 p.m., or like all the way through, or should we be revisiting that to actually, I understand there's other bylaws that affect things like noise and things that you can do, but according to the way this is written, somebody could set something off at 9 o'clock Friday morning if they wanted to. And I'm not sure that that's what the intent of this was.
Director Maxwell, can you shed some light there?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe that through the public consultation that staff engaged many people, commented on the fact that they wanted to still have the ability to set them off on the weekend regardless. And the other days, the times were listed because they do not fall on weekend days normally. So as the calendar goes through, Victoria Day is usually a Monday. And so that's why the Thursday to Sunday, or the Friday to Sunday was just left without times associated with it.
But it still means that somebody can set something, off at 9 o'clock Friday morning. Why didn't we make it from Saturday to Monday if a holiday is on Monday? Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't read right to me.
Well, we were allowing them to set fireworks off on Fridays.
Friday evenings,
Yes.
or
but
Friday at 9 in the morning.
Well, most people don't set them off in the daytime, so.
Well, this is why I appreciate that, but that's why I'm wondering why we didn't say, because we have times on the other ones, why we didn't say Friday at 6 p.m. or till Sunday at.
Director?
Thank you. The other consideration is that the noise bylaw would override that you're allowed to make noise during the day on weekdays, so that wasn't specifically noted as to times for fireworks.
Councillor Lieb.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think just for clarity's sake, between Friday and Sunday, you can set off fireworks anytime as long as they fall within the noise bylaw hours. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I tend to agree with Councillor Withey that maybe we should be more descriptive in this bylaw, because I don't see a lot of people coming up and buying fireworks and saying, oh, we better check the firework bylaw, and then we'll check the noise bylaw. So I think the more specific we can be and the easier we can make it for people to understand, I think is a benefit to especially our bylaw people. And neighbors, visitors who are going to be disturbed by fireworks or let off fireworks. So I would propose an amendment that we change on any weekend from Friday at dusk till Sunday at, yeah, you can start at Friday at dusk and Sunday midnight, something like that. 11?
Can, Counselor With, as soon as you brought it up, can you note specifically where you found this in the 286-page agenda?
It's page 16 of 66.
You're not in this agenda, right?
I don't know where I got this.
Can I
It's paper.
elaborate here? Page 248, 3.1.
Also in the definition, I think it's 1.15.
Well, these are the special days, though. It says, consumer fireworks within the town may be set off as follows, on any weekend. So you want that to say any weekend between 6 PM Friday? Or 9 PM Friday, or what time would you like in there? 6 on any weekend between 6 PM Friday and, when's the noise bylaw kick in, 11? So 11 PM Sunday. Councillor Schumacher first.
Well, I was just, does that have to change in 1.15 where we determine what weekend means?
One point 1.15?
Of that bylaw. Page before? Or 2 pages before?
Okay, weekend means the period from Friday evening through Sunday evening. I think we have it covered.
That's where
Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. For clarity, we're saying that on any weekend between 6 PM and 11 PM. Not at 2 in the morning, not at 4 in the morning, between 6 PM and 11 PM. So if we add between 6 PM and 11 PM, that should cover us all.
But we already have in the definition, weekend means the period from Friday evening through Sunday evening.
Yeah.
So, and you can't do it after 11, so that pretty much covers it. The definition covers it. Councillor
I thought it was being clear.
Fitzgerald.
It's a simple thing, and I think we're probably going to tire it out, but this is going to be displayed where they sell fireworks. Our noise bylaw is not, so I think we should make it as descriptive as we possibly can. And it's a very small amendment. We're adding a 6 and an 11 in 2 paragraphs, so I suggest we do it.
6 PM on Friday and 11
Sunday. Through to 11 PM
6
Sunday.
PM, add on any weekend, 6 PM to 11 PM. Even though every other time it's 8 PM, but we'll put 6. Okay. All right. All right, I have a amendment moved by, who would like to move it? Councillor Withey, seconded by Councillor Weeb. Be it resolved that bylaw 2016, section 3.1A be amended as follows: on any weekend between 6 PM Friday and 11 PM Sunday. All in favor? That's carried. So the main motion as amended, be it resolved that bylaws 2016 to 2029 inclusive be reported, read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 24th day of February. All in favor? That's carried.
you don't disrupt the Port Sydney fireworks, I'm good.
New business. Counselor Fitzgerald, was there something that you wanted to discuss under new business? And we might have to suspend the rules of procedure to do it, so I need to know if there's something you want to discuss.
There is. Would you like a brief overview?
Is it staff direction, or is it?
Yes.
So it's just staff direction? So we can do that without suspending?
If this is staff directed to come back with something, that's okay. If it's staff direction to do something, then we have to suspend the rules.
To come back with something.
Okay.
Okay, the floor is yours. New business.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that we have an issue with sidewalk winter maintenance. And it's not an issue of level of service, or they've been doing a great job of the sidewalks there this year. And I had to bring this up because operations was canceled. We're moving to committee, so I wanted to get this evolving before it's too late. So currently we have a non-maintained winter section of sidewalk from Timber Trail to Clark's Lane, which is about 250 meters. And currently it's blocked off with a snow fence, and people are having to navigate on Muskoka Road 10 rather than, because they can't navigate around the snow fence. So I'm suggesting that we ask staff to bring the costs associated with the increase in level of service to winter maintained from Timber Trail to Clark Crescent, so we can decide at General Committee how we proceed.
Okay, so we need a motion to direct op staff to do that? Is that moved by Counselor Fitzgerald? Seconded by Counselor Schumacher? Okay. Be it resolved that council directs staff to bring to committee the costs of increase to the level of service for winter maintenance on Muskoka Road 10 from Clark Crescent to Timber Trail. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, general information. Council correspondence is in your package. Fairburn Nursing Home update. Just a quick update that the District of Muskoka did vote unanimously last week to make the application to the province for the additional 64-bed licenses, which if granted will see the new Fairburn built by district at 160 beds. This compared with our 76-bed home is a huge benefit. Statistics show we have a wait list for long-term care in Muskoka between 2 and 10 times the provincial average. It's also good for our current job force at Fairburn and potential new jobs. So now the application will be filed and we'll wait for the province's answer to that, but we're pretty optimistic. So that was a big meeting at district. Any questions on that? Councillor Armour?
First, I'd just like to congratulate our district councillors on the great job they did at, with the other councillors from across Muskoka itself. Great job. My second question is, you might, I don't know if he answers that. So if we get denied the increase of 64 beds, does the 96 go back on the table? I've never heard that question asked at the committee.
And we don't really have the answer to that yet. That will depend on what happens with the 64. The 96 are approved. Yeah, so. Yes, Councillor Withy? Yes.
One of the reasons that so when the 96 was approved, they weren't, we had got 20 extra beds when they weren't making new licenses. So what happened in the interim, why it sort of turned to 160 is that they always wanted to be a multiple of 32 beds, and they all of a sudden determined that 96 wasn't sustainable as well, which was why the push to make it even larger than 128 at the time. So I think you're right that the 96 has been technically approved. I'm not sure that they would, where that would go if the additional beds that are being applied for now weren't approved. I do agree with the mayor that it's looks pretty good that we're going to get them from all indications. They were kind of waiting for everybody to get their act together on that. So I'm pretty bullish on this happening, but that's why. So yes, approved, but would they build it? Not likely.
The rest of district committee updates. Councillor Alcock.
I'll be brief, especially after the Fairburn debate. That was really an all-in day, that's for sure. Our Community and Planning Services Committee was, again, fairly uneventful, but I will highlight that we did have a presentation from a transportation consultant who had been looking at making all of the things that we do in the district, all across the district, from a public transportation perspective, looking at the Corridor 11 bus, looking at what we do in Bracebridge and Huntsville, and there are other programs that out there that I didn't even know existed. So they looked at all of that. They knew and they identified where there were the biggest gaps and needs, again, across the district. And one of the things that was apparent was we needed better east-west connections, and that means out to Georgian Bay, out to the farthest reaches of Muskoka Lakes, in areas like McTier and whatever. So they came forward with their preliminary directions report and asked committee to give them the blessing to finalize it, which we did. But it was a recognition that if we were looking at a report that would answer all of our needs locally, and as an example, getting workers to the resorts like Deerhurst, that's probably not in this report. There will need to be a next phase that takes a more integrated look and in fact involves the businesses that require that. But because there just isn't that kind of money at this point, and they threw out a couple of pilots. Like everything else, you want to try it and see if it works. So it was a good report for what it does, but it doesn't certainly, it's not the magic bullet for everything. So that was that, and there was the district has revised their community initiatives grant program, and so there was a discussion around that. It was kind of interesting, and I think we'll have new areas where they will be able to provide community grants, and I think that we'll look for more some information that will come out of that. The province, as we all know, has been slowly decreasing some of their housing towards our housing or funding towards our housing programs, but they've kind of been introducing things and then withdrawing things. So we had an update on that. There's a new Canada-Ontario community housing benefit, which is utilizing the federal dollars. Finally, we're starting to see some of the federal dollars starting to flow. So we approved our program manager to enter into an agreement with the province regarding these new federal dollars. And lastly, the thing I want to report on is 2 affordable housing units were approved in Huntsville, right on Main Street, and it's in the house that is being renovated right beside Econo Lodge. So we will have 2 new affordable housing units there. That's it.
Operations was canceled, and Councillor Thompson's not here. Councillor Withey, anything else from health? Or?
Yes, thank you. We had 2 meetings. We had the special meeting with the Fairburn thing, which you've touched on. We had another meeting where we had updates about the coronavirus from public health and the sort of latest numbers, which are changing daily, as everybody sees. We Commander Armour was in attendance to talk to us about new ambulance purchases for 2020. And that was really, there wasn't really much else. I mean, there's lots of correspondence and stuff, but it was okay. That's about it.
And we also had a special council meeting right before district where they presented the new flood mapping update, and it's available on the muskoka.on.ca website. And there's some really good mapping if you want to look at the flood areas in Huntsville and the lakes and the rivers. And then at our regular council meeting, other than the Fairburn, the other big news was we actually passed the district budget as well at that meeting. Kind of got lost in the shuffle, but they passed it at 3.4%, or roughly $16 per 300,000 of assessment. Okay. Yeah, I guess that comes up before. I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to let our CAO just give a brief update too on our March 18th session here on the spring freshet.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Town of Huntsville is working in conjunction with the Township of Lake of Bays to put on an information session with respect to the 2020 spring freshet. We do have different organizations that have confirmed their attendance. I just actually should touch on the time. So it is on March the 18th from 6 until 8, and it's being held at the Active Living Center. We do have confirmation that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry will be in attendance, so they'll be able to give us an update on the water conditions at that time. We do have the Muskoka Watershed Council who's coming to speak as well. We have the District of Muskoka who is going to come and speak to the new flood mapping, so they'll have the mapping and answer any questions individuals will have. We'll also have updates from the Town of Huntsville and the Township of Lake of Bays with respect to changes to their emergency plans, so that would be of interest to people in those communities. And then we do have a presentation by a company called 211. So council will probably recall having discussions about potentially using that service for customer service during events such as the Spring Freshet, and we will be using that for this year if it needs to be activated. So there'll be a presentation on how that 211 system works. So I would encourage individuals to come and listen to the presentations. There will be booths set up from each of the organizations to answer any questions, and there'll be lots of information on how to protect yourselves during a flooding event or a spring freshet event. So March 18th, Active Living Center, 6 until 8. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 9:10 p.m. for the purpose of considering matters pertaining to the following sections under the Municipal Act, Section 239, personal matters about an identifiable individual, litigation or potential litigation, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and Section 239-2, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land. All in favor? Thank you. And we will take a break before we go in.